Breakfast used to be the loudest meal in the house, and then one morning it just went quiet. The griddle cooled off, the biscuit pan stayed in the cabinet, and the woman who had everything on the table before the sun came up was gone. Nobody wrote down what she made. They were not fancy meals. Fried cornmeal mush reheated in the skillet with bacon grease. Cold buttermilk poured over crumbled cornbread in a tall glass. Eggs scrambled with whatever the garden had that week, on a plate that had been in the family longer than the house. Some of them disappeared because the ingredients stopped being cheap. Some vanished because the person who made them passed away and the recipe went with them. And a few were pushed out by cereal boxes, frozen waffles, and a kitchen that decided it did not need a stove anymore. 100 forgotten breakfasts that vanished from the family table, all the way through. Wheat germ and yogurt bowls were the health kick of the 1970s that snuck their way into forgotten cookbooks and quick breakfast guides. You would scoop some plain yogurt into a bowl, toss on a spoonful of wheat germ, maybe drizzle honey or sprinkle nuts if you had them, and breakfast was done in minutes. It was quick, packed with protein, and felt ahead of its time back when most breakfasts were still sugar-heavy cereals or toast. The health-conscious crowd loved it because it kept you full. Parents liked it because it was easy. And even the kids got on board, mostly because the yogurt cut through the plain, nutty taste of wheat germ. These bowls were everywhere in the 70s, showing up in homemaker magazines, diet guides, and those community cookbooks with spiral bindings. But like a lot of forgotten breakfasts, they slipped away when trends shifted. Now it is all smoothie bowls and protein shakes. Crackling cornbread required a hog killing, or at least access to someone who'd just had one. Cracklings, the crisp, brittle pieces of pork skin left behind after you rendered the lard, smelling of wood smoke and hot fat, went straight into the cornbread batter in Appalachian and Deep South kitchens before it hit the pan. You mixed coarse ground cornmeal with buttermilk, a cracked egg if you had one, salt, and a handful of broken cracklings, then poured it into a skillet so hot the batter sealed the moment it landed. The crackling pieces distributed through the bread as it baked, their fat seeping into the crumb and making it tender in a way plain cornbread never matched. Wikipedia documents this specifically as a southern dish, pork cracklings baked into skillet cornbread. What no entry says is that you could always tell who'd gotten to the cracklings first, and the fragments at the bottom of the bowl before the batter went in were considered fair game. Soft boiled eggs in egg cups were once the picture of a wholesome morning meal. Eggs would be simmered gently until the whites were set, but the yolks remained golden and runny. Each egg was served upright in a small cup with the top cracked open and toast strips called soldiers used for dipping. It was a breakfast beloved by children who found the dipping fun and parents who appreciated its speed and nutrition. Boiling an egg took only minutes, and bread was already on hand in every kitchen. This was the sort of breakfast that felt elegant and homely at the same time, especially with decorative egg cups on the table. Many homes had them as part of everyday dishware, a detail that has faded from modern life. Soft-boiled eggs were not just quick, they carried a sense of tradition, teaching children simple table manners while still being playful. They were practical, delicious, and endlessly repeatable. Today, egg cups are more of a novelty, but once they were an ordinary sight in American homes. It is one of those small, simple breakfasts that lingers in memory for the warmth it brought to the start of the day. Stewed tomatoes on toast was the breakfast that brought garden abundance to the morning table in a form both savory and satisfying. Housewives heated canned or fresh tomatoes in a saucepan with butter, sugar, salt, and pepper until the mixture bubbled and thickened slightly. The warm tomatoes were spooned over buttered toast, their juices soaking into the bread while chunks of fruit provided texture. Some added a sprinkle of basil or a dash of Worcestershire sauce for depth. The combination of sweet acidic tomatoes against rich buttered bread created a flavor profile that woke up taste buds without overwhelming them. This was particularly popular in rural homes where canned tomatoes lined cellar shelves, preserved from summer gardens. Children sometimes resisted the unfamiliar combination, but adults appreciated how the dish stretched pantry staples into something that felt like a complete meal. No recipe was needed because proportions adjusted naturally to how many slices of toast waited on plates. Butternut squash fritters brought vegetable-forward eating to Thanksgiving breakfast, turning winter squash into crispy cakes that satisfied like meat. Grandmothers roasted butternut squash the day before, then mashed the tender flesh with eggs, flour, scallions, and warm spices like nutmeg. The mixture was formed into patties and pan-fried in butter until golden brown, creating fritters that were savory and slightly sweet. The exterior crisped beautifully while the interior stayed soft. These were served with sour cream on the side. Families appreciated having a vegetable dish at breakfast. Children who normally rejected squash would eat these happily. The fritters used up extra squash from pre-Thanksgiving cooking experiments. Adults loved them with coffee, finding the savory flavors perfect for morning. This breakfast represented creativity, proving that Thanksgiving vegetables deserved attention at every meal. Number 6. A mug of hot cocoa and buttered toast. On a cold morning, this was warmth you could wrap your hands around. The cocoa came from a tin of powder, Hershey's or Nestlé's, spooned into a mug with a little sugar and topped off with hot milk straight from the pan. A quick stir, and the steam rose up sweet and chocolatey, the kind of smell that pulled a child out of bed faster than any alarm. Alongside it went a slice or two of toast, buttered while it was hot so it soaked right in, ready for dunking. Some kitchens dropped a few marshmallows on top if they had a bag in the cupboard. It was a breakfast built for chilly school mornings, when a hot drink did as much to warm a body as anything on a plate. A tin of cocoa lasted a whole winter and cost very little. For an older person now, it is pure comfort, soft toast, and a warm, sweet mug that asks for nothing but a pan of milk and 3 minutes at the stove. Sometimes the warmth itself was the meal. Baked apple filled kitchens with cinnamon sweetness, while providing seniors with warm fruit requiring almost no preparation. A whole apple was cored, placed in a baking dish filled with brown sugar, butter, and cinnamon. Baked slowly until flesh softened and skin wrinkled, the apple emerged transformed, natural juices mingling with melted sugar into syrup pooling around the fruit. Eaten warm with a spoon, sometimes with cream, baked apple was dessert and breakfast combined. The dish cost nothing when apples were plentiful, requiring no watching during slow baking. Seniors could prepare it the night before and warm leftovers for quick morning meals. The soft flesh was gentle on sensitive stomachs and easy to eat without teeth. Baked apples provided fiber, vitamins, and psychological comfort of something smelling like home. This breakfast has disappeared from modern kitchens as instant options took over, yet baked apples once represented simple abundance requiring only patience and a working oven. German pancakes, also known as Dutch babies, are a unique breakfast dish that originated in the early 20th century. These pancakes are often topped with powdered sugar or fruit. The ingredients for German pancakes include eggs, flour, milk, and sugar, creating a batter that is poured into a hot skillet and baked in the oven. The key ingredient that gives German pancakes their distinct puffiness is eggs, which cause the batter to rise dramatically while baking. These pancakes are typically served with a squeeze of lemon and a dusting of powdered sugar, enhancing their delicate flavor. In the 1960s, Dutch babies gained popularity in California, thanks to Sunset magazine featuring the recipe in their publication. German pancakes are also commonly referred to as Dutch babies, a name popularized in the United States. Ever wonder why corned beef hash became such a breakfast staple, especially during the bustling post-war era? It combined diced corned beef, potatoes, and spices, all canned for convenience. Typically served with eggs or toast, this meal option was a quick, hearty solution for families on the go. Promoted by brands like Hormel and Libby's, its marketing highlighted the ease of preparation and robust flavor, appealing to those with limited time for cooking. These advertising efforts often portrayed corned beef hash as the hero of the busy morning, saving time without sacrificing taste. The product maximized American values of efficiency and practicality, fitting perfectly into the fast-paced lifestyle of its consumers. It continued to be recognized for its convenience and satisfying taste. Something that was as essential to the hearty sandwich experience in the 80s as the meat itself The cinnamon raisin biscuits that they first released back then are also something people have constantly expressed their desire to see again. Seriously, it was impossible to not order this with whatever you were having. It was only some cents, and it elevated the meal to something else entirely. Think about how your Subway just does not feel complete without a chocolate cookie to go with it, except it is that feeling by 10 times. Cinnamon raisin biscuits were delectable, refreshing, and a light enough breakfast to be fulfilling without making you lazy. Unfortunately, for some odd reason unknown to all of us, despite its very warm place in the hearts of the fans, they took it off the menu in 2002. Now, meat bone broth soup is a slow-simmered dish that most people think is deeply nourishing. When you walk into a kitchen that has this cooking, you start to immediately think that you're in the factory where pain relief medication is made. I mean, it doesn't smell like anything good. This is definitely one of those dishes where you have to trust the process, though, because you're in for a wild transformation. The magic of this recipe starts with the bones. Beef, pork, or chicken, ideally with some scraps of meat still left on there, simmered for hours. If you want to get truly authentic and traditional, then you should simmer them for a few days. Yes, a few days. People actually did that with continuous fires. They also added a lot of onions, garlic, herbs, root vegetables, and whatever else they could find. The idea was that as it would cook, the marrow, collagen, and flavor would all dissolve and melt into the broth, making this super silky texture that just immediately feels amazing on the tongue. It feels a lot more like food than it feels like a broth, soup, or a drink, by the way. As far as the final flavor goes, it's deeply meaty, very subtly sweet, and it has a lot of herbaceous notes depending on the kinds of seasoning you use. Despite what you might think, the minerality from the bones isn't actually too strong. That's what all that intensive simmering is for. Bone broth is actually making a bit of a comeback today, but the rustic version we're discussing here is something that's just stuck to the pages of cookbooks now instead of the corners of our mind. Number 15, red flannel hash with beets. Diced corned beef, diced boiled potato, and diced cooked beets, packed onto the back of a hot flat top under a bacon weight until the bottom developed a deep red-brown crust like a bruise. The cook slid the cake off in one piece, flipped it, and finished it crust down. 2 eggs poached in the steam well went on top. A retired New Hampshire mill foreman in Manchester ate the dish every Sunday morning through the entire 60s decade, and the cook kept a separate cast-iron press on the back of the griddle just for his order. The deep beet color was the whole point, the way the corned beef got reused 2 days after the boil, the way the breakfast plate carried a Friday roast forward into your Sunday morning. Your grandmother in New England may have done the same at home, the boiled dinner Friday, the red hash Sunday. The dish disappeared with the corned beef boil itself. Fried oatmeal patties might not sound so glamorous, but when you were trying to make the most out of the little you had, they were a treat. This Depression-era breakfast was a clever way to use up leftover oatmeal, which was already a cheap and filling staple. Instead of just reheating plain old porridge, people would mix the cold oatmeal with a little flour or cornmeal, form it into patties, and fry it up in a pan. I don't know how I didn't think of this. It's genius. The amount of leftover oatmeal I could have saved, please don't call the Eco Patrol on me. I never know how much is too much. The result of this creative endeavor was crispy on the outside and soft on the inside patties. They could be eaten plain or topped with a little butter or syrup if you had it. And like most of these dishes, they were versatile. They could be savory or sweet, depending on your cravings and your abilities at the given moment. Fried oatmeal patties were a simple but satisfying way to stretch leftovers into another meal. And let's be honest, anything fried tends to taste better. Do I need to reference again the Kentucky Fried Chicken? I don't think so. Fried oatmeal patties were a great way to turn mushy old oatmeal into something you'll look forward to eating. Cheddar grits with butter were the Southern kitchen's answer to rushed mornings when everyone still needed something hot and filling. Quick grits, a little butter, a handful of shredded cheese, and breakfast was done before you even finished your first cup of coffee. It was the kind of meal found in tattered cookbooks, handed down from grandmothers who knew how to stretch a pantry without cutting corners on comfort. These grits were creamy, cheesy, and surprisingly satisfying for something that took less than 10 minutes to whip up. You did not need fancy groceries or a stocked fridge, just the basics. It kept bellies full through school days, work shifts, or long hours in the fields. For a lot of folks, this was breakfast you ate standing up, spoon in hand, on your way out the door. Simple, cheap, and quietly comforting. Grits have stuck around in fancier forms, but this quick, everyday version has slipped through the cracks of modern cooking. Red-eye gravy needed only two things: country ham and black coffee, and if you had to ask why, you weren't from the South. You fried a thick slice of salt-cured ham in a dry cast-iron pan until the fat rendered and the meat browned with a dark caramelized crust on both sides. Then you poured hot black coffee directly into the hot pan, scraped up everything stuck to the bottom, and the whole thing bubbled into a thin, dark, savory liquid you spooned over biscuits or grits. The name came from the ring of fat that floated to the surface and looked in the right light like a bloodshot eye. And knowing that detail separated people who grew up in these kitchens from people who only read about them. Andrew Jackson was reportedly a devoted eater, and the dish appears in cookbooks as far back as the early 1800s. By the 1960s, it had retreated to rural households and old-line Southern diners where nobody had thought to take it off the menu. It faded the same way country ham faded. Toast with apple butter was once a farmhouse staple that carried the warmth of autumn into cold mornings. Bread, often baked the day before, would be toasted on a skillet or under a broiler, then generously slathered with apple butter. Unlike jam, apple butter offered depth. Slow-cooked apples flavored with cinnamon, cloves, and sugar until thick and spreadable. For rural families, it was nearly free, since apples were plentiful and preserving them was a yearly task. Families spent entire days in autumn boiling pots of apples into apple butter, canning jars that would last throughout the winter. On frosty mornings, few things felt as comforting as warm toast with spiced apple butter melting into its surface. The flavor was rich, wholesome, and tied directly to the land outside the kitchen. Children grew up associating its smell with safety, family, and the rhythms of the farm. Today, processed spreads dominate shelves, but jars of apple butter still carry that old flavor of memory. It deserves a comeback, reminding us of when mornings began with something sweet, simple, and homemade. Buckwheat cakes were the dark, earthy pancakes that filled farmhouse kitchens with their distinctive, almost nutty aroma before dawn broke. Housewives kept crocks of buckwheat batter fermenting on counters, feeding it with more flour and water each night so it stayed active and ready. In the morning, a portion was ladled onto hot griddles where the batter spread thin and cooked quickly, developing a slightly sour tang from the fermentation. These pancakes were darker than wheat versions, with a robust flavor that stood up to strong maple syrup and salted butter. Farm families preferred them because buckwheat grew in poor soil where wheat struggled, making it an economical choice. The fermented batter required no leavening. The wild yeasts did all the work. And no recipe was written because the process was learned through doing, through maintaining the starter, through knowing by smell when batter was ready. Cranberry orange muffins were the tart sweet breakfast that balanced richer Thanksgiving morning dishes with bright, fresh flavor. Grandmothers baked these the night before Thanksgiving, using fresh cranberries that burst during baking and orange zest that perfumed the kitchen. The batter combined flour, sugar, eggs, and buttermilk into something tender and moist. Orange zest was grated directly into the mix, releasing oils that made every bite taste like citrus. The muffins baked until their tops domed and cracked slightly. A simple orange glaze was drizzled over the tops while still warm. These muffins were practical because they could be made ahead, freeing up oven space on Thanksgiving morning. Families grabbed them while rushing through preparations. The combination of tart cranberry and bright orange felt distinctly Thanksgiving. Today's bakery muffins can't match the real fruit flavor Grandma achieved. Number 14. Instant Quaker oatmeal. Quaker put it on the shelves in 1965, and a whole new kind of cold morning breakfast was born. The oats came pressed and pre-cooked in their own little paper envelopes, so all you did was tear one open, dump it in a bowl, and pour boiling water over the top. 30 seconds of stirring and it was thick and ready. The flavored packets soon followed, with cinnamon and brown sugar leading the pack, sweet enough that a child needed nothing added. We kept a box on the shelf right beside the regular oats, and on the busy days the instant won every time. It was warm, it filled the belly, and it cost next to nothing per bowl. For a senior on a chilly morning, it still earns its keep. Soft on the teeth, gentle on the stomach, and ready before the kettle even cools. It proved that fast and comforting were never opposites in a 1960s kitchen. Coffee soup sounds peculiar, but sustained countless seniors when food was scarce and creativity essential. Day-old bread was torn into chunks, placed in a bowl, then covered with hot coffee sweetened with sugar and lightened with milk. The bread absorbed warm liquid, softening into something between beverage and meal. Seniors spooned it like porridge, coffee mingling with soft bread, providing caffeine, carbohydrates, and warmth simultaneously. During the Depression, coffee soup cost almost nothing since bread scraps and leftover coffee were already present in kitchens. Seniors could make it in minutes without dirtying extra dishes. In Scandinavian and German immigrant communities, coffee soup carried cultural memories of the old country. The caffeine provided morning lift, while bread gave substance. This breakfast disappeared as prosperity returned, but those who remember recall the strange comfort of warm, coffee-soaked bread on desperate mornings. Deviled eggs for breakfast is a surprising yet delightful dish that has roots in the early 20th century. It's a brunch favorite, featuring hard-boiled eggs filled with a creamy mixture of egg yolks, mayonnaise, mustard, and spices. Dijon or yellow mustard is typically used for a tangy kick, while toppings like paprika, chives, bacon bits, or caviar add variety. The dish is unique compared to other egg-based dishes because of its creamy and tangy filling, contrasting with the firm egg whites. Deviled eggs were originally known as stuffed eggs and appeared in American cookbooks as early as the 19th century, with variations featuring ingredients like vinegar, capers, and anchovies. Post-fortified oat flakes were marketed as a health-oriented breakfast option, enriched with vitamins and minerals to appeal to health-conscious consumers. Introduced by Post cereals, they were promoted for their benefits like improved heart health and additional fiber, aligning with the increasing health trends of the mid-20th century. The oat flakes stood out for their nutritional value and were marketed through various campaigns emphasizing their health benefits. These flakes were known for their hearty texture, which provided a fulfilling start to the day, making them a favored choice for those looking to maintain a healthy diet. The focus on health and nutrition helped establish post-fortified oat flakes as a reliable breakfast option during their time on the market. Next up, we have something that you would think people would want to have during a movie or their favorite show, but worked great as breakfast too. Burger King's French toast sticks first came around in 1985 in competition with Wendy's, who was also launching their own stick campaign in hopes of claiming a place in America's fast food Hall of Fame. And hey, they did, but the Burger King ones just had something saucy in them, something that gave you a jolt of energy for your regular sucky Monday morning shift or lecture. Some other places did try to make these toast sticks like Jack in the Box and Sonic, and some of those were pretty big players like McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts. They did not have as big of a piece of the pie as Burger King, though. What particularly helped these sticks keep their momentum is how well they paired with other items on the menu, and even some of the others on this list later on. Of course, they were great a la carte as well, but who really goes to fast food joints and walks out without combo meals, especially in those old 90s days? Still, those eras are definitely far behind us now, as the time of the French toast stick is long gone by today. One of those was a rice and molasses bowl, which is the kind of dish that just inspires gentle waves of nostalgia in you. It's something that's drizzled with thick, dark molasses. The molasses, which makes for a very bittersweet, smoky bite with sweet undertones, tends to seep into the grains. This actually gives them such a nice autumn-coated color that really just makes you want to set up your best sheet in a park, call a few friends, and enjoy the small things in life. Historically, though, This was nothing that was so romantic. It was a poor man's breakfast and dessert, especially in most parts of the South and the Appalachian regions. It was very common to see among working-class Northeasterns in the 18th century, and it was something that was relied on to stretch ingredients when things were running low. This is because molasses was always really cheap and bought in bulk, and if people weren't growing their rice, they were stocking up on as much as they could. Rice, molasses, and different kinds of bowls are now bygones of different times, but they were really good. Number 18, scrapple with 2 eggs and fried apples. A 1/4-inch slice of Haberset scrapple seared 3 minutes aside on a hot flat top until the cornmeal crust cracked and the inside stayed soft and sage-scented. 2 eggs over easy on top, a side of cinnamon-scented fried apple slices in butter, and a wedge of buttered rye toast. Pennsylvania Dutch diners across the southeast quarter of the state ran the dish on every menu, and the scrapple loaf came in fresh on Tuesdays and Fridays from a meat company in Lansdale. A Berks County tractor mechanic ordered the plate every workday morning at a counterstool in Reading and never sat at the booth even when it was open. Scrapple itself dated to the German colonists in the 1700s, who brought a recipe for panhaas, a meat scrap and grain pudding, across the Atlantic to the Philadelphia hinterland and built it into your regional breakfast vocabulary. The cornmeal and buckwheat binder, the sage and marjoram seasoning, and the loaf and slice habit were a thrift culture turned into a regional staple, the way the Pennsylvania Dutch turned every scrap into a passed-down dish. The cooks slicing scrapple at 4 in the morning were the last commercial link between a colonial-era food culture and a working-class counter. When the small regional packers consolidated in the 70s, the supply chain narrowed and the dish slid off menus outside the mid-Atlantic. A cook in Allentown said it best when a waitress asked him why he kept slicing the loaf at 4 every Tuesday and Friday. He told her the men on the early shift would notice if the slice got thinner, and they did. The dish survived as long as the men did. For today, you'll just have to deal with my sweet tooth and my cravings. Sorry, not sorry. For our next dish, we have rice pancakes. They were a Depression-era classic that turned leftover rice into a delicious breakfast. When food was scarce, nothing went to waste, and this is a perfect example of that. Instead of throwing out last night's leftover rice, people would mix it with a little flour, milk, and an egg if they had one. The batter was then fried up into crispy golden pancakes. Now the same thing goes for buckwheat pancakes. Rice pancakes weren't as fluffy. They were rather a bit chewy thanks to the rice itself, but they were just as good when topped with a bit of butter or syrup. And let's face it, anything that resembles a pancake feels like a treat, even when it's made from the scraps of yesterday's dinner. They were highly adaptable to what your pantry had to offer at that moment. They could go sweet with just a sprinkle of sugar, or savory with a pinch of salt. In a time when creativity in the kitchen was key, rice pancakes were a clever way to make a filling breakfast from practically nothing, proving that resourcefulness can lead to some pretty tasty results. Oatmeal with brown sugar and cream was about as classic as breakfast could get. Quick oats simmered on the stove, topped with a spoonful of brown sugar and a splash of canned milk. It was ready in 10 minutes flat, cheap to make, and warm enough to shake off the worst winter mornings. Families across America leaned on this breakfast when budgets were tight, but everyone still needed something filling to start the day. Quick oats cooked faster than traditional oats, brown sugar gave just enough sweetness, and canned milk made the whole thing creamy even if fresh milk was hard to come by. It showed up in school lunch guides, frugal homemaker magazines, and those old cookbooks buried at the back of every kitchen drawer. For a lot of folks, this was not a special occasion breakfast. It was the daily routine, quiet, dependable, and gone in under 10 minutes. Funny how something so ordinary could disappear so completely, replaced by instant packets and flashy coffee shop menus. Fried grits cakes were what happened after Tuesday. You made a pot of plain grits on Monday, coarse ground white hominy simmered in salted water until thick, poured the leftovers into a greased pan, and by morning they had set solid. You sliced them, fried each piece in lard or a dry skillet until the outside crisped into a golden shell while the inside stayed soft and creamy. A different breakfast entirely from the one it started as. South Carolina Low Country cooks had been making fried grits cakes since at least the 1850s, the tradition spreading inland through the Carolinas and Georgia as a standard use of yesterday's pot. You ate them with eggs, cane syrup, or just salt. The woman who made them knew, without measuring exactly how thick to pour the pan, so the cakes came out even. When she stopped cooking, nobody thought to ask how she knew. Baked beans on toast was a dish borrowed straight from British kitchens but firmly embraced by Americans in the mid-century. Families discovered that canned baked beans, already seasoned and ready to heat, could be quickly spooned over toasted bread for a hot meal in under 5 minutes. It was cheap, filling, and surprisingly comforting, combining the sweetness of the beans with the crunch of toast. This dish became especially popular in working-class homes where money was tight and mornings were busy. Kids enjoyed the sticky beans, and parents appreciated that it was protein-rich without requiring expensive meat. Sometimes grated cheese was melted on top for extra richness, but even plain, it was more than enough to start the day. It also appealed to those who wanted variety beyond the usual eggs and oatmeal. Cooks liked it because it required no real skill, just heat the beans, toast the bread, and breakfast was ready. Though often forgotten now, baked beans on toast carried a sense of thrift and practicality that defined the meals of that era. It showed how international influences quietly reshaped American breakfast traditions in ways that are rarely remembered today. Prune whip was the light, airy breakfast that housewives prepared when something sweet but virtuous was needed to start the day. Stewed prunes were pureed smooth, sweetened lightly with sugar, then folded into stiffly beaten egg whites until the mixture became fluffy and cloud-like. Chilled overnight and served in small dishes, prune whip was often topped with a dollop of whipped cream or a sprinkle of chopped nuts. The texture was remarkable. Light as air, yet satisfying, sweet but not cloying, with the prunes providing earthy depth. Housewives favored this dish because prunes were considered healthful, keeping digestion regular, while the preparation felt elegant enough for company. Children sometimes needed convincing, but the whipped texture often won them over. No recipe was written because success depended on beating whites to proper peaks and folding gently enough to preserve the air that made the dish special. Cinnamon roll casserole transformed individual pastries into a shareable breakfast that fed Thanksgiving crowds without the fuss. Grandmothers cut cinnamon rolls into quarters and arranged them in buttered baking dishes. A custard mixture of eggs, milk, vanilla, and cinnamon was poured over the top, soaking overnight. In the morning, the casserole baked until puffy and golden. A simple glaze of powdered sugar and milk was drizzled over the warm casserole. This breakfast solved the problem of feeding many people without standing over the stove. Families loved it because it could be assembled the night before. The smell of cinnamon and baked dough filled homes with warmth. Children fought over corner pieces with extra glaze, while adults appreciated having something sweet with their coffee. This breakfast proved that convenience and indulgence could coexist perfectly on Thanksgiving morning. Number 10. A glass of Tang and a slice of toast. Nothing tasted more like the space age than that bright orange powder stirred into a glass of cold water. Tang first hit the shelves in 1959, but it was John Glenn carrying it on his Mercury flight in 1962 that turned it into a sensation. Suddenly, the kids wanted what the astronauts drank. You spooned the powder into water, gave it a quick stir, and you had a tart, sweet glass of orange in seconds. No squeezing and no pulp. Pair it with a slice of buttered toast, and a child was fed and gone before the bus came. It was never real orange juice, and the ads leaned hard on the vitamin C to make it sound healthy. But it was cheap, it kept forever in the cupboard, and a single jar lasted a family weeks. For an older person now, it is a fast jolt of something sweet and bright on a slow morning. The orange in the glass and the warm bread on the plate were the whole breakfast. And for a 1960s kitchen, that felt downright modern. Oatmeal with molasses delivered iron-rich sweetness to seniors who understood simple ingredients could provide powerful nutrition. Old-fashioned oats were simmered slowly with salt until creamy, then topped with generous blackstrap molasses. The molasses sank into oatmeal, creating dark swirls tasting of caramel and minerals. Unlike refined sugar, molasses contained iron, calcium, and potassium, nutrients valuable for elderly bodies. A jar cost little and lasted months, more economical than expensive maple syrup. Seniors could prepare oatmeal on the smallest burner, cooking enough for days and reheating portions each morning. The combination stuck to ribs, providing sustained energy through morning activities. The slightly bitter edge of blackstrap balanced bland oatmeal, creating complexity from simplicity. For seniors on fixed incomes, this breakfast represented affordable self-care, warmth, and nourishment without requiring wealth. Oatmeal with molasses has largely disappeared as sugary instant varieties took over. The fluffernutter sandwich, created in the early 20th century, is a classic American dish often enjoyed as a sweet treat or snack. This nostalgic sandwich is made by spreading peanut butter and marshmallow fluff on white bread. The dish typically uses soft white bread, which complements the creamy textures of the fillings. The brand of marshmallow spread traditionally used is marshmallow fluff, invented in 1917 by Archibald Query in Somerville, Massachusetts. It was originally sold door-to-door before gaining widespread popularity. The sandwich became a popular childhood treat in the mid-20th century because of its sweet and satisfying taste. The term fluffernutter was coined by an advertising agency in the 1960s, solidifying the sandwich's identity. Fruit cocktail in heavy syrup was a beloved component of breakfast and dessert menus, particularly during the 1970s. This mix of diced peaches, pears, grapes, pineapple, and cherries, all preserved in thick syrup, was a convenient and tasty addition to many meals. Del Monte and Libby's were leading brands, heavily marketing the product's ease of use and the sweet indulgence it offered. The syrup's rich flavor enhanced the appeal, making the fruit cocktail a quick solution for a sweet serving. In a time when convenience often trumped other considerations, this product stood out for its ability to deliver a variety of fruits in one easy package. Despite shifts in consumer preferences, it remained a practical and appealing choice for those looking for quick fruit options. There's absolutely nothing unusual about wanting to start your week off with a morning melt panini, especially when it is one as good as Wendy's famous sandwich was. Almost similar in size to a burger from KFC or McDonald's at the time and served with tuna, the morning melt panini was a great deal at $1.25, especially if you had one of their coupons. Fast food joints like all of these would play around with promotions and deals all the time to keep spikes in sales steady and coming. Naturally, they worked and kept working, otherwise they would have no reason to keep them coming. Who could blame people, though? Getting your favorite food and saving an extra buck is about as good as it gets in your adulthood. Besides, paninis were a favorite of many people in America already, especially in the Italian-American community. Many homes would love whipping up a good panini during a Saturday evening, but starting your day off with a cheesy melt-based one redefined the experience. Thankfully, in a really memorable and iconic way, and we would love to see this come back. Rolled oats and bacon are a really humble and delicious combination. It does two things very perfectly. It balances the comfort of a cream-heavy dish with the allure of smoky flavors. Now, that's not very hard to do, but I think when a dish makes that work, it's always one for the Notes app. The oats are something you simmer slowly in water and milk. You know, the usual preparation. You have to wait until it becomes completely porridge, though. Stir in these crisp crumbles of bacon, and suddenly the dish transforms into a wonderful savory fantasy. You get to have this decadent texture with just the tiniest bits of smoky aftertaste, and it makes for a dish that just feels like the perfect autumn or winter breakfast. Historically, though, this is a dish that you would actually find more often in the summer times, when people were really trying to stretch out their meals and scraping for protein. Especially in the early 20th century, when rationing meant that almost everyone had to think conservatively about what they were eating and how much of it they were using. The savory oats bowl couldn't ever go mainstream, but I think that suits the quiet nature of the dish. Number 14. The 85-cent 2-egg plate. 2 eggs cooked any style, 2 strips of crisp bacon, a scoop of hash browns, 2 slices of buttered white toast cut diagonally, and a refillable cup of coffee. The plate cost 85 cents at most independent diners in 1964, and the price held steady through the middle of the decade. The price card behind the counter retyped every 6 months. A Toledo office clerk on a Greyhound layover ate one in 1964, paid $1, left the change as a tip, and walked out at 6:20 with the day still ahead of him. The same plate cost $1.10 by 1969, $1.45 by 1972, and $2 by the middle of the 70s. The printed price card behind the counter chased the inflation curve quietly until it stopped trying. The 85-cent plate was the architectural backbone of the working American morning. It was the price point that allowed an hourly worker on a $4 shift to buy a hot breakfast, leave a 15-cent tip, and still keep $3 in his pocket. The plate ran on every counter in the country at a price within a nickel of the same number, because the diner industry in 1964 was operating with butter at 58 cents a pound, eggs at 50 cents a dozen, and bacon at 69 cents a pound. The math worked, and the cook on the early shift could plate 15 of them in 9 minutes. But the inflation of the late 60s, the energy shock of 1973, and the consolidation of the food supply in the 70s broke the price point. By 1980, the plate was $3.25. The 85-cent breakfast was the last moment in your country's history when a hot, full plate was within reach of a man working an hourly shift. The plate did not disappear. The price did, and your father's stool at the counter is still bolted to the floor. To get back to the dandelion greens with eggs, this wasn't a fancy meal worthy of a restaurant, but it was nutritious and cost, well, basically nothing, which was the two most important facts to put into consideration back then. Plus, there was something satisfying about eating a pest for breakfast. While we are talking about eggs, let's not forget to mention scrambled eggs with breadcrumbs, the ultimate egg stretcher. When you've only got a few eggs but a lot of mouths to feed, you start getting creative. It sounds humble, and it was, but it was also an ingenious way to stretch a couple of eggs into a meal for the whole family. Breadcrumbs, often made from the stale bread sitting around, were mixed into the eggs to bulk them up and make the dish more filling. Sometimes people would even fry the breadcrumbs first to add a bit of crunch. In the Depression era, nothing went to waste, even breadcrumbs. Adding breadcrumbs to eggs wasn't just a cost-cutting trick. It was also a way to make sure everyone got a portion, no matter how little you had to work with. It's nothing revolutionary, and personally, I think it has nothing on the dandelion green eggs, but it was a way to make the bellies stop gurgling. Egg in a hole was the breakfast trick every old cookbook seemed to know. Simple enough to pull off in under 10 minutes, but special enough to feel fun. You would cut a hole in the center of a slice of bread, toss it in a buttered skillet, and crack an egg right into the gap. Toasted bread, fried egg, breakfast done, fast and filling with barely any cleanup. It showed up in kitchens from the 1930s through the 70s, always tucked between other quick, comforting recipes. Some folks called it toad in the hole, others sunshine toast, but it was always the same idea, a no-fuss breakfast for busy mornings. It used cheap ingredients most families already had and turned them into something that actually made the morning feel bearable. Kids loved it for the novelty, parents loved it for the speed, and nobody complained when breakfast showed up looking fun for once. It is one of those meals that quietly kept mornings moving, long before breakfast sandwiches and drive-through lines took over. Before there was sausage in the gravy, there was tomato. Tomato gravy was the late summer answer to an overloaded garden and an understocked pantry, bacon drippings from the can, a roux of flour browned dark enough to smell nutty, and tomatoes too soft to do anything else with. You peeled them with your fingers over the skillet, let the juice hiss into the hot fat, and stirred until it thickened into something tangy and rust red that had no business tasting as good as it did. Appalachian food authority Ronnie Lundy documented tomato gravy as a distinct regional tradition in her cookbook Victuals, tracing it through the mountains of Virginia, West Virginia, and Tennessee, where it appeared over biscuits, cornbread, and grits. It was the gravy you made when there was no sausage, no cream, nothing but a pan and tomatoes that wouldn't last another day. You knew who in the family made it right, and you knew the others didn't get the roux dark enough. The women who made it never measured a single thing. Leftover pie for breakfast was once common enough that nobody batted an eye. In the 1950s, when dessert pies were baked at home regularly, there was often a slice or two left on the counter by morning. Instead of wasting it, people happily ate it cold with coffee or milk. A slice of apple pie or pumpkin pie was filling, quick, and made mornings feel special even when money was tight. Kids loved it because it blurred the line between breakfast and treat, while adults saw it as practical since it used up leftovers. It was especially common after holidays when kitchens overflowed with pies, but the tradition stretched into everyday life as well. At a time before strict rules about healthy breakfasts, pie was just another way to start the day. Even workmen heading out early might grab a wedge on the way to the job, knowing it would keep them full until lunch. It was not about indulgence as much as it was about convenience and resourcefulness. Today, the idea seems strange, but back then it was normal. Leftover pie for breakfast was proof that sometimes the quickest solution was also the most satisfying. Poached eggs on corned beef hash was the breakfast that turned leftover dinner into morning luxury through the magic of a runny yolk breaking over crispy potatoes. Housewives chopped leftover corned beef with boiled potatoes, onions, and seasonings, then pressed the mixture into hot skillets where it fried until a golden crust formed on the bottom. The hash was flipped in sections or stirred to create more crispy bits throughout. Meanwhile, eggs were slipped into barely simmering water, swirled gently, and lifted out when whites set around still liquid yolks. Placed atop the hash, these eggs became sauce when cut, their richness mingling with the salty beef and crispy potatoes. The dish was weekend breakfast royalty, appearing on tables when there was time to do it properly. No measurements existed because success depended on feel, knowing when hash was crispy enough, when water was the right temperature, when eggs were perfectly done. Apple cider. French toast transformed ordinary breakfast bread into something that tasted like concentrated autumn. Grandmothers soaked thick slices of day-old bread in a mixture of eggs, apple cider, cinnamon, and vanilla, letting each piece absorb the liquid. The cider added natural apple sweetness and tang that regular milk couldn't provide. Cast iron griddles were buttered generously, then the soaked bread was laid down to cook slowly until golden brown. The bread puffed up as it cooked, creating custardy interiors. Served with butter and warm maple syrup, this breakfast felt celebratory and special. Families loved it because it used up bread that might otherwise go stale. The apple cider flavor connected breakfast to the season's apple-picking traditions. Children would request seconds and thirds, their plates sticky with syrup. Today's frozen French toast can't match this homemade version. Number 16, the brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tart. Kellogg's set this loose on the country in September of 1964, and the test stores in Cleveland sold clean out almost overnight. The whole pitch was speed. You dropped the foil-wrapped pastry straight into the toaster, and a minute later out came a warm, sweet rectangle with no plate, no spoon, and no stove. Brown sugar cinnamon was a favorite from the very first batch, along with strawberry and blueberry. For a busy family, it felt like a small miracle. Breakfast that a child could fix alone before anyone else was awake. Older folks remember it as the moment breakfast stopped being something you cooked and started being something you popped down. It is not health food and nobody pretended it was. But for a quick warm bite with morning coffee, the brown sugar cinnamon one still tastes exactly like a 1960s kitchen on a school day. By the way, real quick before we get to the next one, if these old morning recipes are bringing the kitchen back to you, I put a whole collection of these vintage breakfasts together in one easy guide so you can keep them handy. You will find the link down in the description below this video. Now let's get back to the countdown. Tomato gravy on toast brought tangy comfort to seniors who transformed canned tomatoes into something elegant. Bacon drippings or butter were heated, flour stirred in for roux, then canned tomatoes added and cooked until thickened into rosy gravy. Seasoned with salt, pepper, and a pinch of sugar to balance acidity, the gravy was ladled over toasted bread. The combination was savory, slightly sweet, and deeply satisfying in ways plain toast could never achieve. This breakfast cost pennies, since canned tomatoes were cheap and shelf-stable. Seniors could make gravy in minutes using one skillet, and leftovers kept well for reheating. The soft, sauce-soaked toast was easy to eat for those with dental troubles. In Southern and Appalachian communities, tomato gravy carried memories of mothers and grandmothers who served it when money was scarce. This breakfast has vanished from American tables, considered too humble for modern tastes. Yet it once provided genuine comfort. The bologna and egg breakfast sandwich is a straightforward and satisfying dish that has been enjoyed since the mid-20th century. This dish combines fried bologna, a cooked egg, and cheese on a soft roll or bread. Fried bologna sandwiches have been a staple in working-class American households since the early 20th century, providing a hearty and affordable meal option. The bologna is typically prepared by frying it until it develops a crispy edge, while the egg is cooked to preference, often sunny side up or over easy. The sandwich is usually served on a soft roll or white bread, complementing the savory fillings. In 2019, a food truck in Nashville, Tennessee, gained attention for serving gourmet versions of the classic bologna and egg sandwich, elevating it to a trendy brunch item. Remember Quisp cereal? Launched by Quaker Oats in 1965, this cereal brought a whole new level of fun to the breakfast table with its alien mascot and saucer-shaped pieces. It quickly won over children with its sugary flavor and captivating animated commercials that made breakfast fun. The cereal's unique branding and playful design were key differentiators in a crowded market. Despite its initial success, the shift towards healthier breakfast options posed challenges for Quisp, leading to its eventual status as a nostalgic item brought back periodically to appeal to adults who had grown up with it. This strategic shift in marketing to tap into nostalgia, combined with occasional updates to its formula, allowed Quisp to maintain interest among former fans while navigating the complexities of modern cereal markets. McDonald's is a name anyone can recognize and still holds up today just as much as before, but do you remember when they were serving the iconic Big Breakfast at stores? McDonald's best and most iconic starter was probably their Big Breakfast, which literally everybody can remember having. This dish was truly a star on the 70s and 80s menus way before anybody ever even thought of a McMuffin. Mostly popular amongst teenagers working part-time, and McDonald's staff would enjoy a big breakfast on early work days. It was not just them, trust us. 8-year-olds to 35-year-olds all enjoyed getting soft, delicious scrambled eggs served with the fluffiest muffins you could get under $1. Sounds like a pretty good deal, right? No wonder it performed as well as it did, even if it got discontinued in 2002 in favor of hot dogs and burgers. Buckwheat porridge is a dish that screams warm and umami. It has a very nutty backbone and it has an incredibly rustic flavor profile. If you cook this slowly, the buckwheat groats start to absorb water and the milk. The end result is this ultra-divine, thick porridge that's really filling, deeply satisfying, and just what you need after a hard day of work. Its texture is something that's a lot coarser than oatmeal, it's a lot chewier, it's more toothsome, and it has a rich and bitter flavor that makes it stand out from softer kinds of breakfast grains. Unsweetened, it's a bit less robust. It leans towards savory more than it does to anything complex, flavor-wise. Sweeten it with molasses, honey, or brown sugar, though, and you get an entirely different picture. Vividly smoky, deeply sweet, and just the right kind of warm, it becomes this ideal comfort food that restores your spirit and gets you ready for your day. Buckwheat porridge has always been something people have used like that, to just get themselves on their feet when they don't feel like making anything else, and I think it's time to bring the tradition back for all grain enthusiasts. Number 19. The Lumberjack Trucker Special. The plate filled the entire pass-through window. 3 eggs cooked over medium, a 6-ounce ham steak with the bone in, 3 strips of thick-cut bacon, 2 breakfast sausages, a heap of hash browns the size of a man's hand, 4 pieces of buttered toast, a side of stewed apples, and a stoneware mug of coffee. The waitress refilled the second the rim got near the bottom. A long-haul driver running cargo out of Cleveland on a route that ended in Albuquerque ate one in the pre-dawn at a Truck Stops of America counter on Route 40 outside Columbus. And the calorie load carried him across the Mississippi, across Kansas, across the Texas Panhandle, and into the New Mexico high desert without another stop except for fuel. The plate cost $2.40 in 1964. Truck stop diners that ran 24 hours depended on the dish to fill the 4 to 6 slot when the cross-country fleet rolled through. The cook on the overnight shift could plate 8 of them in 7 minutes. Drivers called the plate the lumberjack, the trucker, the long haul, the 4-8 depending on the highway. What most people miss is that the plate was not built to be eaten in one sitting. The driver took half on the plate, asked for a foil wrapper, and ate the second half 300 miles later, parked on a shoulder outside Tulsa, with the engine idling. Then, in 1966, the federal hours of service rule was tightened. The cross-country fleets restructured into shorter relay legs, and the giant pre-dawn plate shrank back to a normal 3-egg breakfast on the menu of the same diners that used to send a man across your country on one order. Staying in the sweets aisle, we're moving on to homemade granola. Wow, I know some of you are shocked. That sounds so modern and trendy. But back then, it was a practical, affordable breakfast option for families trying to make every penny count. Granola was made from simple, long-lasting ingredients like oats, nuts, seeds, and dried fruit. Things that could be bought in bulk or found at home. Store-bought cereal was often too expensive, so homemade granola became the go-to breakfast for those looking to save money. It was baked until crunchy and could be eaten with milk, sprinkled on top of yogurt, or just munched on as a snack. The best thing about homemade granola is that it is entirely customizable. No raisins? No problem. Throw in some dried apples or whatever you had. No nuts? Just add more oats or seeds. It was the ultimate cleaning out the pantry recipe. Granola could also be made in large batches, meaning you had breakfast sorted for days at a time. It was nutritious, filling, and a little sweet, making mornings feel just a bit more special when times were tough. Plus, it kept well, so you could stretch it out over several days without worrying about it going stale. Cream cheese and jelly sandwiches were one of those quiet kitchen tricks passed down from old homemaker guides, perfect for rushed mornings when the fridge looked bare, but breakfast still had to happen. You would take soft white bread, spread on a swipe of cream cheese, and finish it off with grape jelly or whatever jam was on hand. That was it. Served cold or lightly toasted, it was fast, sweet, and filling enough to count. For a lot of families, this sandwich was a saving grace on mornings when eggs were too expensive and cereal boxes were empty. Cream cheese made it creamy, the jelly brought the sweetness, and together they turned plain bread into something that actually stuck with you through the morning. You could find versions of this recipe in old community cookbooks, lunchbox ideas, and school pamphlets reminding parents how to keep breakfast simple. Somewhere along the way, it got pushed aside by granola bars and frozen breakfast sandwiches, but back then, it was a 10-minute meal that worked every time. Funny how those easy, no-fuss breakfasts slipped through the cracks. There was no recipe for kush. It wasn't that kind of thing. You crumbled a leftover biscuit into the bottom of a cup, poured in your morning coffee, strong, dark, often cut with chicory because it stretched further, added a spoon of sorghum molasses, and ate it with a spoon before the bread dissolved. In the Smoky Mountain living account of one Appalachian family's traditions, a father recalled eating this his whole life, calling it his favorite dessert even when food was plentiful, savoring it the way someone who'd gone without did not waste small pleasures. The bitterness of the chicory, the sweetness of the sorghum, the softening biscuit still firm enough to push against a spoon. You either knew what it was or you didn't, and the people who knew it were the ones in those kitchens before sunrise, watching the fire get started. There is no commercial version of kush. It lived entirely in memory, and memory has its limits. Shredded wheat with warm milk was the original convenience breakfast before sugary cereals came along. Large wheat biscuits, plain and unflavored, were placed in a bowl and doused with steaming milk until they softened. The result was hearty, filling and simple, a far cry from the frosted cereals that would later dominate grocery aisles. Parents liked it because it had no frills but plenty of nutrition, and children ate it because it was what was served. Shredded wheat kept for ages in the pantry, making it reliable for mornings when fresh bread or eggs were scarce. The warmth of the milk softened the dense biscuits, turning them into a porridge-like meal within minutes. It was especially comforting in winter when kitchens were cold and families needed something hearty before heading out. Generations grew up with shredded wheat as their daily start, long before colorful mascots made cereal exciting. Though plain, it carried the kind of comfort that lingers in memory, tied to mornings spent at the family table. Today, it has mostly been forgotten, replaced by sugary options that promise more excitement but less nourishment. Still, it was once the backbone of quick American breakfasts. Coffee cake was the breakfast centerpiece that appeared when company was expected, or Sunday mornings felt special enough to warrant something sweet. Housewives creamed butter with sugar until fluffy, added eggs one at a time, then alternated flour mixture with sour cream until batter came together smooth and thick. The streusel topping, butter, sugar, flour, and cinnamon rubbed together into crumbs, was scattered generously over the top before baking. The cake emerged golden and fragrant, its surface crackling with sweet cinnamon crumbs while the interior stayed moist and tender. Sliced into generous squares and served with coffee, this was breakfast as celebration, proof that weekday efficiency could give way to weekend indulgence. No recipe was consulted because proportions were learned through years of making, adjusting, and perfecting. Knowing by how batter fell from beaters, by how topping felt between fingers when everything was right. Cod pumpkin bread pudding with bourbon sauce was the decadent breakfast that blurred the line between morning meal and dessert. Grandmothers cubed day-old bread and soaked it in a custard mixture of eggs, cream, pumpkin puree, cinnamon, and nutmeg overnight. The pudding baked until puffy and golden. The bourbon sauce was made by melting butter with brown sugar and a generous splash of bourbon, creating a rich glaze. The combination was intensely flavorful, with pumpkin providing earthiness and bourbon adding warmth. This breakfast was reserved for adult gatherings or late-morning brunches. Families loved it because it used up stale bread while creating something luxurious. The bourbon was optional but traditional, giving the dish a grown-up edge. Adults would linger over second helpings, their coffee cups refilled multiple times. This breakfast represented indulgence and celebration, perfect for holidays when rules could be bent. Number 4. Honey drizzled over warm toast. Simpler than this it does not get, and yet a slice done right could feel like a small luxury. You toasted the bread, buttered it while it was still hot, then ran a slow line of honey back and forth until it pooled and melted into the butter. The warmth thinned the honey so it soaked into the bread instead of sitting on top. A jar of honey lived in nearly every kitchen, sometimes gone solid and grainy at the bottom, and a little went a long way. Some folks added a shake of cinnamon over the top for a sweeter bite. It was the breakfast for a morning when there was nothing else in the house, just bread, butter, and the honey jar, and somehow it always satisfied. For an older person, it is soft, sweet, and gentle on the teeth, ready in the 2 minutes the toaster takes. It cost almost nothing and asked for no skill at all. Plain bread and honey, the kind of quiet pleasure that never went out of style. Rice porridge with butter transformed leftover rice into creamy morning comfort for seniors stretching every grain. Cold rice was simmered with milk and salt until grains broke down and the mixture turned thick and smooth. A generous pat of butter was stirred in, melting into golden ribbons throughout the pale porridge. Some added sugar, while others preferred simple buttery richness. This breakfast cost almost nothing since it used rice that might otherwise be discarded. The soft texture required no chewing, ideal for elderly folks with dental problems. Rice porridge could be prepared in minutes on the smallest burner, perfect for seniors with limited mobility. The warmth spread through the body, providing comfort on cold mornings. In Asian and European immigrant communities, rice porridge carried cultural memories connecting elderly cooks to distant homelands. This breakfast has largely disappeared as instant oatmeal took over, but those who remember it recall how butter transformed plain rice into something satisfying. Puffed wheat cereal, which was first created in the late 19th century, is a light and airy breakfast food that has been enjoyed for generations. The cereal, made from whole wheat grains, is typically enjoyed with milk or as a topping for yogurt. The process of making puffed wheat cereal involves exposing the grains to high pressure and heat, which causes them to expand and become light and crispy. Puffed wheat cereal was popularized by the Quaker Oats Company, which marketed the cereal as a healthy and nutritious breakfast option. Quaker puffed wheat was introduced in 1909 by the Quaker Oats Company, following the success of their puffed rice cereal. The cereal's unique light texture sets it apart from other breakfast cereals. In 1952, puffed wheat was one of the cereals featured in the first televised commercial for Quaker Oats, showcasing its versatility and appeal. Heard about space food sticks? Launched in the early 70s, these snacks promised a taste of astronaut life right on your snack plate. Introduced in the early 1970s, they were marketed as a nutritious option that provided sustained energy, with flavors like peanut butter and chocolate. The novelty of their space-age concept, combined with practical packaging that made them easy to consume on the go, initially drew considerable attention. The connection to NASA and the allure of consuming astronaut food added to their appeal, particularly among children and young adults intrigued by space travel. The innovative approach of space food sticks to combining nutrition with the excitement of space exploration helped them capture a unique niche in the snack market. A mini skillet bowl sounds healthy enough, right? That was not the only fast food name that would take a step in a more greener direction, as McDonald's came out with their fruit and yogurt parfait sometime after their big breakfast, initially being a sweet cup you could get for just $1. It was also a wonderful breakfast if you were trying for a healthier lifestyle or were one of those early morning run people. Maybe you had the gym in the afternoon and were keener on lighter breakfasts, or maybe you just want to get your fruit game up. Either way, the parfait sold in waves and made sales go high for an item that was irregular from the rest of the menu. Unfortunately, it was something they discontinued during the pandemic to make service quicker for workers because everyone prioritized minimizing contact back then. Now, parsnip hash is a sweet, savory dish that boggles your mind. Because what really does parsnip hash entail? It's a sweet and savory skillet dish that smells a lot like summer and tastes like something that just came out of a wood-fired stove. Parsnips were diced, fried, and they turned golden at the edges. The idea was to caramelize them until they were just about to be overcooked, because there's this really specific sweet spot between overcooked and just typically caramelized where the flavor gets super concentrated. The end result was a nutty, peppery, and sweet dish that was honestly to die for. If you're looking for something healthy to add to your diet, this is also a wonderful option. And historically speaking, it's always been something people ate throughout the winter to keep their health strong, their immune system locked in, and their bellies full. Some people definitely prefer things completely vegetarian, and this is a pretty amazing way to go about it. If you're looking for some inspiration for your meal plan, then there's no better or healthier dish to start out with than turnip hash. Also, if you do end up trying this, you absolutely have to share the experience in the comments. I'm low-key dying to know what turnip hash is like. I have quite a sweet tooth today, and I wish I could say that's because that time of the month is approaching. But, oh well, no excuses for me. Coming in on number 3, we have peanut butter muffins. This probably sounds familiar, and that is because you've most likely heard every health-oriented TikToker or Instagram influencer mention it at least once. It is quite popular in today's day and age, and not for bad reasons. But during the Great Depression, they weren't as luxurious as they are today. Quite the contrary, they were literal lifesavers. Peanut butter was cheap, packed with protein, and easy to store, making it a go-to ingredient for stretching meals. The muffins were a genius creation, made from simple pantry staples like flour, sugar, and a big scoop of peanut butter. They didn't need eggs or butter, which were often hard to come by, and they baked up into a hearty, slightly crumbly treat that filled you up for hours. The peanut butter provided a rich, nutty flavor, and you could eat them for breakfast, lunch, or as a snack, midday or midnight. They weren't just about the taste. They were supposed to give you strength for the day, and that's exactly what they did. They were a practical, budget-friendly way to get in as much protein as possible when times were tough. Spoon bread was one of the Depression-era foods that took humble ingredients and transformed them into something magical. It's like cornbread, but with a soft, custard-like texture that you literally scoop out with a spoon, hence the name. Spoon bread was like cornbread's creamy, comforting cousin. It was made from pantry staples, like cornmeal, milk, and a little butter. Spoon bread was a dish that delivered big on comfort despite being simple and cheap. It was baked until golden on top, but still creamy inside, almost like a cross between pudding and bread. The beauty of spoon bread is that it didn't take much for it to be absolutely delicious. No toppings, no spices, nothing of that sort. You could enjoy it plain or add a bit of cheese, sugar, or even that leftover bell pepper hiding away in the pantry. It was great for breakfast, a side dish for dinner, or even as a dessert with a drizzle of honey. In tough times, spoon bread was the perfect way to make a little cornmeal go a long way. And anyway, any food you can eat with a spoon has a cozy vibe to it, doesn't it? Apple ring pancakes were straight out of those old Betty Crocker cookbooks and Sunday church potlucks that every neighborhood seemed to have. You would slice an apple into thick rings, dip them in pancake batter, and fry them up on the griddle. The result was a warm, fluffy pancake wrapped around sweet fruit, all ready in under 10 minutes. Kids loved them because it felt like dessert for breakfast, and parents loved them because they used what was already in the fridge. Apples were easy to keep on hand, batter came together fast, and the whole thing cost next to nothing. Some folks dusted them with powdered sugar, others kept it plain, but either way, it was a breakfast that disappeared fast. These showed up everywhere, from rural farmhouses to suburban kitchens, quietly filling plates long before frozen waffles and toaster pastries took over. It is one of those breakfasts you do not hear about anymore. But back then, it was a reliable way to start the day. Chocolate gravy sounds like something a child invented, which is almost exactly what it was. Except the mothers and grandmothers of the Ozarks and Southern Appalachians invented it, and they were feeding the whole family. You melted butter in a skillet, stirred in flour until it cooked, added cocoa powder, sugar, and whole milk, and kept stirring until it thickened into something dark and glossy over cathead biscuits. The dish, also called cocoa gravy, soppan chocolate, or chocolate mush, was documented across communities from North Carolina and West Virginia through the Arkansas Ozarks and into Northeast Mississippi. Sunday morning food, the reward for getting through the week. The smell of cocoa hitting a hot roux at 6 in the morning is a smell that does not leave you. The women who made it never used a recipe. They poured until the color looked right, tasted until the sweet matched the bitter, and that knowledge left the kitchen when they did. Peanut butter and honey sandwiches were once the quick, dependable breakfasts that carried children through school mornings. Long before energy bars and drive-through meals became common, parents spread peanut butter on slices of bread, drizzled honey on top, and wrapped them in paper within minutes. The combination was sticky, sweet, and protein-rich, making it both quick and nourishing. For many households, honey was easier to keep than jelly and paired perfectly with the earthy taste of peanut butter. Children often ate these sandwiches in the car, on the bus, or even walking to school, showing convenience foods were nothing new. It was the kind of breakfast that took under 5 minutes to prepare, but still felt indulgent compared to plain toast. Parents liked it because it kept energy steady through long mornings without needing a hot stove or heavy cleanup. Over time, advertising for cereal pushed it aside, framing sandwiches as lunch only. Yet those who grew up in the mid-century remember mornings that began with peanut butter and honey. Forgotten today, it once embodied the idea that the simplest meals were often the best. Creamed eggs on toast was the weekday salvation that appeared on breakfast tables when time was short and pantries were lean. Housewives would melt butter in a skillet, whisk in flour until smooth, then slowly add milk while stirring constantly until a silky white sauce formed. Hard-boiled eggs were chopped roughly and folded into this creamy base, seasoned with salt, pepper, and sometimes a dash of paprika for color. The mixture was spooned generously over slices of toasted bread, creating a breakfast that was filling without being fancy. Children loved the mild flavor, while husbands appreciated something warm before heading to work. The dish required no measuring because every housewife knew the feel of proper roux consistency, how the sauce should coat a spoon. It stretched expensive eggs further while providing protein that lasted through morning chores. This was breakfast born from instinct rather than instruction, the kind of cooking that happened automatically when dawn broke. Fried caramelized apple and brie crepes were the elegant breakfast that made Thanksgiving morning feel sophisticated. Grandmothers made thin crepes from scratch, whisking together flour, eggs, milk, and melted butter until smooth. The batter was poured onto hot buttered pans and cooked until lightly golden. Apples were sliced and caramelized in butter with brown sugar and cinnamon until tender. Creamy brie was placed inside each crepe along with the warm apples. Then the crepes were folded into quarters. The combination of sweet apples, melted cheese, and delicate crepes was unexpectedly perfect. Families who usually ate simpler breakfasts felt fancy eating these. The crepes required skill and attention, but impressed guests tremendously. Adults loved them with coffee, while children were divided. This breakfast proved that Thanksgiving morning could be refined without being fussy, elevating the holiday with French-inspired elegance. Number 9. Nabisco shredded wheat biscuits. These big pillowy bricks of woven wheat were already old friends by the 1960s, sitting in the cupboard with nothing added and nothing taken away. The old-fashioned way had a little ritual to it. You set 2 biscuits in a bowl, poured hot water over them to soften the wheat, then drained it off before the milk and sugar went on. Plenty of folks skipped that step and just splashed on cold milk, watching the biscuit drink it up and go tender. Either way, you were eating in under a minute. There was no sugar coating and no fuss, just plain wheat that filled you up, which is exactly why grandparents swore by it. A box cost very little. For a senior today, it still earns a spot on the shelf, gentle on the stomach and soft once the milk soaks in. It never once needed a cartoon on the box to sell it. Stewed prunes served as breakfast and gentle medicine for seniors who understood regularity mattered as much as flavor. Dried prunes were simmered in water with sugar until plump, releasing natural sweetness into thick, dark syrup. The fruit became tender enough to eat with a spoon, and the cooking liquid turned almost like sauce. Seniors ate these warm from bowls, sometimes with a splash of cream, or simply spooned up the sweet prune juice. Natural laxative properties made this breakfast valuable for elderly digestive systems needing encouragement. Dried prunes cost little and lasted months without refrigeration, practical for fixed incomes. A handful could be stewed in minutes on a small burner. The taste was deeply sweet with caramel undertones from slow cooking. For seniors living alone, stewed prunes represented self-care, requiring minimal effort, but delivering maximum benefit. This breakfast has nearly vanished from modern tables, replaced by supplements lacking the warmth and flavor of the original fruit preparation. The malted milk drink, a sweet and nostalgic beverage, first appeared in the late 19th century. This creamy delight is made from milk, malt powder, and sometimes ice cream, blended into a refreshing treat. The drink was invented by William Horlick, who patented malted milk powder in 1887 as a nutritious supplement for infants and invalids. It was popularized by brands like Horlicks, which marketed it as a nutritious and tasty option. Unusual flavors or variations of the malted milk drink include chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla, adding to its appeal. In the early 20th century, malted milk was touted as a health tonic and was even recommended by doctors for its nutritional benefits. The drink inspired a love for creamy and sweet drinks, often enjoyed as a quick breakfast on the go. Spam rose to prominence during World War II, appreciated for its convenience and shelf life, and it continued to be a staple in American households thereafter. It was marketed as a versatile ingredient suitable for a variety of dishes, appealing to families looking for quick, budget-friendly meal options. Hormel Foods, the maker of Spam, responded to changing culinary preferences by introducing new flavors and varieties, aiming to reinvigorate the brand's appeal amid shifting consumer tastes that favored fresher, less processed food options. These efforts included targeted marketing campaigns that emphasized Spam's versatility in modern home cooking, showcasing its ability to adapt to current trends while maintaining its core identity as a convenient and reliable food product. Along the same time as McDonald's and Burger King was making breakfast items, You had Wendy's trying to get into the game early with their breakfast burrito, which really did do much better than they initially expected it would. People knew Wendy's for their chicken and their amazing square beef hamburger patties, so it is not surprising that some people went in with hesitant minds when they first ordered this. We always say you cannot know until you try, and that could not have been truer for Americans when they would start taking their first bites of a succulent, explosive breakfast burrito. It had a perfect mix of flavors and harmony between meat, vegetables, sauces, and bread, all in some very affordable. Wendy's use of cheddar cheese also really got people going and sold them on the idea Americans will eat almost anything if you put some hot melted cheese on it. The success of Wendy's newly propelled breakfast menu, including the burrito, slowed down around 2013, so it's pretty disappointing that you cannot get that same luxury yet incredibly cheap breakfast. Cold potato with an onion salad was basically the chic way to go vegetarian back then. The dish had a subtle charm that heavily relied on the texture and seasoning. It was also ideally served chilled, because, well, science. I'm just kidding, but basically, the starch starts to firm up. This gives the potato a much more dense and sometimes waxy bite that contrasts really well with the creamy dressings. It also works spectacularly with the flavors present in an onion salad, which honestly adds the perfect crunchy element. Cold potatoes can feel like a mush fest after a few bites, so having some alternative textures in there really helps smoothen everything along. Historically, cold potato and onion salad is something we likely derived from 18th century Europe. This is a pretty traditional recipe in German and French circles, and leftover boiled potatoes were always dressed in oil, vinegar, and herbs so that waste could be avoided. American potato salads are something that evolved from these traditions, and they gained a lot of popularity by the time of the 20th century as a potluck, picnic, and community dinner staple. Number 10. Country fried steak with cream gravy. A pounded cube steak dredged in seasoned flour, pan-fried in a 1/4 inch of pork lard until the crust set deep brown, plated with a ladle of pan drippings cream gravy that pooled across the meat and the home fries like a slow flood. 2 eggs over medium and a buttered biscuit came on the side. A Texas oil field foreman at a La Mesa counter stool ate the plate every weekday morning for 2 decades and never asked the cook to swap the lard for shortening. The Midwest and the South used the dish as the heaviest breakfast on the menu, and a cook on the early shift could turn out a dozen plates in 15 minutes if the lard was hot. The cube steak and lard was a cattle country adaptation of a European cutlet your grandmother could not match at home because no household stove ran the lard hot enough. Staying on the sweet side of things, we'll be talking about the ultimate zero-waste recipe, banana bread. Back then, letting food go to waste was practically a crime against humanity, and banana bread was the best solution for those overripe bananas to be saved. Instead of tossing them, creative cooks found a delicious way to use them up. They mixed them with flour, sugar, and a bit of baking soda, and created a nice, dense loaf of heaven. Eggs and butter were optional, and people often replaced them with whatever fat they had lying around. The natural sweetness of bananas made it a budget-friendly alternative to other desserts. Plus, banana bread was highly versatile. You could throw in nuts, raisins, cinnamon, or whatever odds and ends you could scrape up to stretch it even further. Banana bread was one of those Depression-era foods that stuck around to this day, and it's for good reasons. It is the epitome of a sweet, delicious, but healthy treat that has got everyone in a chokehold. It is healthy and packed with nutrients, while still remaining tasteful and filling. No wonder all those cooking influencers are making banana bread every other day. Gee, show us another recipe. Tomato juice and a toasted English muffin was the stripped-down breakfast of every vintage weight loss guide and old cookbook trying to keep mornings fast, efficient, and low-calorie. You would pour a glass of chilled tomato juice, toast an English muffin, maybe spread a little butter if the diet allowed, and that was breakfast. It was basic, practical, and done in under 10 minutes. Back then, this was advertised as a smart start to the day, simple, savory, and filling without much effort. Housewives, office workers, and even students were told this meal would keep you going without weighing you down. It showed up everywhere, from hospital diet plans to homemaker magazines, quietly filling bellies long before protein shakes and pre-packed bars took over. The tomato juice gave a little bite, the English muffin brought warmth, and together they were enough to start the day when time and groceries were tight. It is one of those breakfasts nobody brags about now, but it quietly got families through busy mornings without all the bells and whistles. Scrapple was Pennsylvania Dutch country's answer to the entire hog. You took the scraps, head meat, organs, trimmings that would otherwise be discarded, simmered them in broth until tender, then combined that meat with cornmeal, flour, and spices, and poured the mixture into a loaf pan to chill solid overnight. In the morning, you sliced it thin, a quarter-inch at most, and fried each piece in a dry pan until the outside formed a crust that crackled when you pressed it with a fork. The loaf came from German immigrant traditions carried to Pennsylvania in the 17th century, where it was called panhas. The takeout has documented scrapple as surviving today only in Pennsylvania Dutch country and around Philadelphia, nearly impossible to find elsewhere. An entire regional breakfast tradition that fed working families for 3 centuries quietly returned to the place it came from, and nobody outside that place noticed it leave. Oatmeal with molasses was one of those breakfasts that carried families through the morning without any unnecessary effort or wasted time. Before instant oatmeal packets with added sugars and artificial flavors crowded grocery shelves, most households relied on simple rolled oats boiled on the stove with a drizzle of molasses for sweetness. It was hearty, thick, and carried a distinct richness that set it apart from lighter maple syrup. Families appreciated it because molasses was inexpensive, widely available, and often already stocked in pantries for baking, canning, or preserving. A bowl of oats simmering on the stove, then served steaming with molasses poured across the top, was comforting in a way that stuck with people. It was more than just fuel. It was tied to thrift, resourcefulness, and home. Kids sometimes complained about the strong flavor, but mothers knew it filled them quickly and lasted until lunchtime. Workers heading to long shifts also leaned on it, since oats were dependable and molasses did not spoil easily. It was simple, practical, and strong. Forgotten today, oatmeal with molasses remains one of those breakfasts that deserves a return to the table for both comfort and memory. Dutch babies were the dramatic breakfast that puffed impossibly high in the oven before deflating into buttery, custard-like perfection. Housewives whisked eggs with milk, flour, and a pinch of salt, then poured the thin batter into a smoking hot skillet already slicked with melted butter. The pan went straight into a screaming hot oven where the batter performed its magic, climbing the sides, billowing into golden peaks, creating a crater in the center. Pulled from the oven, the Dutch baby was immediately dusted with powdered sugar and squeezed with fresh lemon juice, the combination of rich eggy pancake and bright citrus creating something between breakfast and dessert. Children watched through oven windows with amazement as the batter rose, making this dish as much entertainment as nourishment. No recipe was needed because the ratios were simple, equal parts egg, milk, and flour. And success depended on oven temperature and timing that housewives learned through repetition. Turkey sausage and sage breakfast patties were the lighter alternative to pork sausage, bringing Thanksgiving flavors to the morning table. Grandmothers mixed ground turkey with fresh sage, thyme, black pepper, and sometimes maple syrup, forming the mixture into small patties. The patties were pan-fried in butter until golden brown, filling kitchens with the herbal aroma of sage. These tasted like Thanksgiving dressing in breakfast form, with sage providing that distinctive holiday flavor. Families appreciated the turkey option because it felt healthier while still being satisfying. The patties could be made ahead and reheated on Thanksgiving morning. They paired perfectly with eggs and toast. Adults who were health-conscious loved having a leaner protein option. Children often preferred these to regular sausage because the flavors were familiar. The sage and turkey combination became so associated with the holiday that eating them any other time felt wrong. Number 13. Coffee and buttered toast. This was the breakfast the whole morning was built around, the one that started the moment the percolator began its slow gurgle on the back burner. By the time the coffee finished perking, 2 slices of bread had popped up, gone soft with butter, and that was the meal. No drink was sweeter to a working man than that first cup poured from the percolator, dark and a little bitter, with toast to soak up the steam. Some folks dunked the toast right into the cup. Coffee came in a big metal can back then, ground at the store, and a single can stretched across a week of mornings. For an older person, it is still the truest comfort there is. Warm, simple, and tied to 50 years of mornings that all began the same way. Sometimes breakfast was nothing more than the coffee and the bread, and somehow that was always enough. Scrambled eggs with onion elevated simple eggs into something substantial for seniors eating alone. A small onion was diced and cooked slowly in butter until soft and sweet, then beaten eggs added and stirred gently into soft curds studded with golden onion bits. The combination was savory and satisfying in ways plain scrambled eggs never achieved. This breakfast cost little since eggs were cheap and onions lasted weeks. The onion stretched 2 eggs into what felt like a larger meal, important for seniors watching budgets. Cooking onion first released sweetness, balancing eggs' richness. Seniors could prepare this in one small skillet, minimizing cleanup. The soft curds were easy to eat without strong teeth. Served with toast, scrambled eggs with onion provided complete protein and comfort. This simple variation has faded as plain scrambled eggs became the default, but adding onion transformed basic breakfast into something worth anticipating. Waffles with chicken is a classic Southern dish that beautifully combines savory and sweet flavors, first appearing in the 1930s. This dish pairs crispy fried chicken with fluffy waffles. The ingredients include chicken, flour, eggs, and buttermilk for the waffles, while the chicken is coated in seasoned flour before frying to golden perfection. The waffle batter is cooked in a waffle iron, resulting in a tender texture. Maple syrup is usually paired with this dish, enhancing the flavor combo. Roscoe's House of Chicken and Waffles helped popularize it, introducing this delicacy to a wider audience and solidifying its place in American food history. This iconic restaurant chain was established in Los Angeles in 1975 and quickly became famous for this unique dish. Ever wondered why Maxwell House Instant Coffee, launched way back in 1892, became synonymous with American mornings? Founded in 1892, its memorable slogan, "Good to the last drop," helped carve its niche in American coffee culture. The brand leveraged traditional, comforting imagery in its marketing, enhancing its appeal as a reliable household staple. Despite the rise of fresher, artisanal coffee options, Maxwell House expanded its line to include premium varieties, adapting to broader tastes. This strategy aimed to maintain relevance amid changing consumer preferences, focusing on providing quality and convenience. Maxwell House's efforts to update its product offerings were crucial in addressing the evolving demands of the coffee-drinking public. Speaking of dreamy sandwiches that set the mood just right, it would be downright criminal to record this and not talk about Jack in the Box's prime rib steak and egg sandwich. A warm flour tortilla wrap with hash browns, prime rib, cheese, onions, and a lot more, making it one of the most premium savory thrills you could get on an affordable budget. People ate these up like goblins, sparing no thought for the punch to their gut health-wise or how heavy one of these really was. Listen, this really shouldn't be too surprising if you know anything about prime rib steak and America's long-standing love for each other. It has always been one of the most popular ways to get your protein, and the idea of prime rib steak sandwiches and other bread-based dishes is not new. What was new was the innovative flavors Jack in the Box managed to hit and maintain with its sauces, and we gotta say, adding in the hash browns definitely helped too. Something we would spend a quarter of our paycheck on if it came out today for sure. Souse is a dish that actually shows you just how much resourcefulness the working class had back then. The nose-to-tail mentality of people was really something that persisted throughout several centuries before coming to a close leading up to the 2000s. This is a dish that was incredibly averse to being typical. It was one of those things that was different not because it wanted to be, or because it was trying to be, but because it just really had to be. The cooked meat was something that was chopped, mixed with different kinds of vinegar and spices, and suspended in a natural gelatin as it cooled down. Served cold, thick, and in delicate little slices, it had a punch that really helped to balance out the flavors of the pork, with a texture that will keep you stimulated throughout the whole meal. This is a dish that shows you all the different flavors the American South really has to offer. Number 17. Buttermilk pancakes with a bacon strip. 3 pancakes the size of the saucer, a single thick strip of bacon laid across the top like a brown sash, and a small steel pitcher of warm syrup tipped slow over the stack so it soaked into the seam between the cakes. The bacon on pancake order was the standard child's breakfast at most diners through the 60s, and the cook ladled the batter from a stainless quart pitcher straight onto the flat top. The cake hit the griddle, bubbled at the edge, and the cook flipped it once, 90 seconds aside. A school bus driver in Sandusky brought his daughter to a counter stool every Friday before her early school day and ordered her the stack with the strip and a small glass of orange juice. And your father may have done the same for you, the same stool, the same Friday morning ritual, the same orange juice. The dish was as much a ritual as a meal. Moving on to everybody's favorite, pancakes. Depression-era pancakes were the flapjacks without the fluff. They were all about making do with what you had, and that often meant pancakes without the luxury of eggs, butter, or milk. But resourceful cooks found a way. These flapjacks were made with basic ingredients like flour, baking powder, water, and maybe a little bit of oil or fat if you had it. While they weren't the fluffy, buttery pancakes we all know and love today, they still knew how to hit the right spot. Fry them up on a hot griddle, and you'd get a crispy, golden treat that was perfect for slathering with whatever topping you could scrounge up, molasses, jam, or even just a dusting of sugar. They were flat and a bit chewy, but they did the job of filling bellies without making you pull a bank job. You could make them savory by tossing in some leftover vegetables, or keep them sweet with a drizzle of honey. They were proof that you didn't need fancy ingredients to make something tasty. Sometimes the simplest meals are the most satisfying, especially when they remind you of what's possible even when times are tough. Molasses milk with soda crackers. Sounds strange now, but for rural families and Depression-era kitchens, it was a fast, practical breakfast when the fridge was nearly bare. You would warm up some milk, stir in molasses for sweetness, and crumble soda crackers right on top. That was it. It was not fancy, but it filled you up, gave you a little energy, and made use of things that lasted forever in the pantry. Molasses was cheaper than sugar and packed with nutrients. Soda crackers were everywhere, and milk, fresh or canned, was always a breakfast staple. Old farm cookbooks, church recipe cards, and rural homemaker guides all had versions of this tucked inside, passed around by folks who knew how to stretch the simplest ingredients. It was humble, filling, and comforting in its own odd way. These days, it is almost unheard of, replaced by granola bars and cereal bowls. But back then, this quiet little breakfast got people through hard mornings with nothing but warm milk and a little ingenuity. The dripping pan sat on the back of the stove all week, and on Monday morning it was breakfast. Bread drippings, the solidified fat and juices from Sunday's roast, were spread cold on toast with a pinch of salt, exactly the way butter would have been used if butter had been available. In working-class households across the rural South and Midwest in the 1960s, the dripping jar was as standard as the salt shaker, and you knew at a glance what had been cooked that week by the color of what was in it: pale yellow from chicken, gray-white from beef, amber-dark from pork. The tradition traced to British and German immigrant kitchens where bread and drippings had been a laborer's staple for centuries, and it survived long after it vanished from cookbooks. Heritage food researcher Adele Nozadar documented this as a centuries-old British working-class practice still recalled by people in their 70s. The can went away when the refrigerator came, and what went with it was the specific economy of never letting anything go. Quick rice pudding cups were a way to turn cold leftovers into a comforting breakfast in minutes. When families had leftover rice from dinner, mothers would reheat it in milk with sugar, raisins, and cinnamon until it became creamy. The result was a warm, sweet dish that could be eaten straight from the pot or poured into cups for the children. It was inexpensive, easy to prepare, and felt like a treat, even though it was made from scraps. Kids loved the raisins and spice, and adults enjoyed how filling it was without being heavy. Rice was cheap and kept well, which made this dish a dependable fallback whenever mornings were rushed. Instead of throwing out leftovers, people turned them into something delicious that carried them through the day. It was practical but comforting, proof of how resourceful home cooks were in mid-century America. Over time, convenience cereals replaced it, but many still remember a bowl of warm rice pudding as a childhood favorite. Today, it is rare to see rice pudding served at breakfast, but it once held a proud place at the table. Quick, sweet, and hearty, it was too delicious to truly deserve being forgotten. Cheese dreams were the breakfast sandwiches that turned simple ingredients into something children begged for and adults secretly craved. Housewives buttered bread slices, layered sharp American cheese between them, then fried the sandwiches in butter until bread turned golden and cheese melted into stretchy strings. The technique was identical to grilled cheese, but the name carried morning magic. Calling them dreams made breakfast feel special. Some housewives added thin slices of ham or tomato, but purists kept to bread, butter, and cheese alone. The sandwiches were cut diagonally, the better to see the molten cheese oozing from the center, and served hot when the contrast between crispy exterior and gooey interior was at its peak. No recipe existed because every housewife knew proper grilled cheese by the sound of butter sizzling, by the color of toasting bread, by the moment when cheese reached perfect meltiness. Pecan pie overnight oats gave busy Thanksgiving cooks something healthy that could be grabbed from the refrigerator without any morning effort. Grandmothers combined rolled oats with milk, brown sugar, chopped pecans, cinnamon, and vanilla in mason jars the night before. The mixture sat in the refrigerator overnight, with the oats absorbing liquid and softening into creamy porridge. In the morning, the jars were topped with extra pecans and maple syrup. The beauty was in the convenience and the fact that everything was made ahead. Families could eat breakfast at different times as people woke up. The flavor was familiar and comforting, connecting breakfast to the pecan pie that would appear later. Health-conscious relatives appreciated having something with oats and nuts. Children enjoyed eating from their own individual jars, feeling grown up. This breakfast represented modern convenience applied to traditional flavors. Number 7. French toast, the one that takes day-old bread and makes it taste like a treat. This was the trick every thrifty kitchen knew, a way to rescue slices that had gone stiff in the bag instead of throwing them out. The dish is ancient. The old French called it pain perdu, which means lost bread, born from the simple refusal to waste a loaf. You beat an egg with a little milk in a shallow dish, dropped the stale slices in to soak up the custard, then laid them in a buttered skillet until both sides went golden and the middle turned soft again. A dusting of sugar or a pour of syrup finished it. The staler the bread, the better it drank up the egg, which is why yesterday's loaf made the best breakfast in the house. 3 or 4 minutes in the pan and a forgotten heel of bread came back to the table looking like something special. For a senior cooking for one, it stretches a single egg and the end of a loaf into a warm, sweet plate. It was poverty turned into pleasure, and nobody at the table ever guessed the bread had been on its way to the bin. Sardines on crackers delivered complete protein and nutrition for seniors who valued convenience and economy. A tin of sardines was opened and small fish arranged on saltine crackers, sometimes with lemon or hot sauce. The combination was salty, briny, and intensely flavored in ways making each bite satisfying. This breakfast required no cooking, no heat, and no cleanup beyond a tin and plate. Sardines cost little and lasted years in the pantry, reliable protein when fresh food was unavailable. The calcium in sardine bones and healthy fats made this breakfast nutritionally dense despite simplicity. Seniors living alone appreciated that breakfast could be ready in seconds, perfect for mornings when energy was low. The crackers provided carbohydrates and crunch, balancing the soft, oily fish. In fishing communities and immigrant households, sardines carried no stigma, just practical protein. This breakfast has nearly vanished as modern tastes moved toward blander flavors, yet it once sustained countless seniors. Rice Krispies Treats for Breakfast is a playful and inventive dish that originated in the mid-20th century. In 1940, Kellogg's introduced Rice Krispies cereal, and soon after, recipes for Rice Krispies Treats began appearing on the cereal box, contributing to their widespread popularity. This fun treat consists of Rice Krispies cereal mixed with melted marshmallows and butter, shaped into bars. Rice Krispies give it a light and crispy texture, while toppings like chocolate chips, peanut butter, or colorful sprinkles make it festive. The treats gained popularity when families began enjoying them as a playful snack, beloved by both children and adults. Their airy texture and gooey sweetness set them apart from other cereal-based treats. Rice Krispies Treats showcase the potential for creative and indulgent snacks, reflecting the joy of childhood and the endless possibilities of breakfast. Blast off with Tang. Launched by General Foods in 1959, this vibrant drink rocketed into popularity by becoming the beverage of choice for astronauts during the 1960s space race. This stellar connection provided Tang with an unbeatable marketing boost, aligning it with innovation and adventure. With a lineup of flavors like orange, grape, and tropical punch, orange soared as the fan favorite, beloved for its vivid color and zesty taste. Tang's ads frequently featured space missions, solidifying its image as the futuristic drink of choice. Originally designed as a vitamin-enriched drink for convenience, Tang later shifted its marketing towards health-focused themes to keep up with changing consumer preferences about natural ingredients and sugar content. We have talked a lot about wraps, but what about the great stuff that goes with them? Chick-fil-A filled in the side item role pretty well with its spicy chicken biscuit, which today you can get for $2.25. But back then, during their golden days, both quality and popularity, you could get them for half a dollar. Spicy chicken biscuits were also great as a combo meal with a drink and a side of your picking, and that was something people definitely reacted positively to. The company noted the growing trend of spicy food and predicted that the upward momentum would stay that way, and boy were they right. Even if they played a good part in keeping that pace going in the ever-developing food scene of America, people in general wanted more stuff with a kick. Chick-fil-A really saw an opportunity and grabbed it, and breakfast menus were forever better for it. Salted herring with potatoes is a dish that is built entirely on contrast. The briny meets the bland, and strong undertones meet soft aftertastes. The herring itself is something that's preserved in brine, right? So it's deeply flavored. It's firm when it comes to the flesh, it's slightly oily, and that tang isn't for everyone. But an honest-to-God seafood lover is going to enjoy the life out of it. The dish itself is something that's most commonly served cold, slightly warmed, or just with a side of elegant mashed potatoes. As elegant as they can be when they're made by a frustrated mom who just wants to get the table set up, really. A bit of chopped onion, sour cream, and dill, and you'll be remembering your mom's cooking soon enough. You know, salted herring with potatoes has always been something that's deeply considered a working-class regular, especially in the American Midwest and Northeast. It was so common to see this in coastal communities where fresh fish were always abundant. Preservation was something even kids could tell you about. Salted herring let families eat protein year-round, and potatoes were cheap and easy to grow, and they could be made into 1,000 different things. Number 21. Pork roll, egg, and cheese. A round disc of Taylor pork roll, slit 4 times around the edge so it would lay flat on the griddle, seared 2 minutes aside until the rim curled and the surface developed a deep mahogany crust like seared ham. A fried egg with a soft yolk slid on top, a square of American cheese melted across both, and the whole thing landed on a buttered hard roll. A plumber in Trenton ate one every weekday morning for 3 decades and never asked the name of the cook. The sandwich was a New Jersey signature, but in the 60s you could find it across the entire I-95 corridor in any diner with a Taylor box in the walk-in. The 4 small cuts in the meat were the tell of a cook who knew the trade. It was the breakfast that built your working state. Since I can't stop thinking about sweets, let's circle back to them for a bit. Applesauce bread. Applesauce bread was one of those sweet, comforting recipes that made a comeback in the Great Depression when butter, sugar, and milk were hard to come by. Applesauce was cheap, easy to make, and could substitute for many of the pricier ingredients in baking. Applesauce added moisture and sweetness to bread without needing lots of sugar, butter, or oil. Pretty much all the good stuff that people didn't have access to. You'd mix it with flour, baking soda, and whatever spices were around. Cinnamon was the best, but you had to be lucky. This was the perfect recipe to create a dense, cake-like bread that was perfect for breakfast or dessert. And let's not forget the applesauce itself. It was a hero in its own right. People made it from leftover or bruised apples that would have otherwise gone to waste. So, not only was applesauce bread thrifty, but it was also the original waste-free, eco-friendly breakfast. Plus, it could be easily customized with nuts, raisins, or anything else you had on hand to make it stretch further. In a time when dessert was a rare treat, applesauce bread brought a little sweetness into some pretty tough days. Peanut butter and banana on toast was not just a breakfast. It was a survival trick hidden in government pamphlets and school lunch guides from decades past. You toasted a slice of bread, slathered on peanut butter, and sliced up a banana right on top. It sounds basic now, but during hard times this was protein, potassium, and energy in one affordable package. Families loved it because it was cheap, quick, and used things every pantry had on hand. The United States Department of Agriculture even recommended it for busy families when money was tight but mornings were busier. Sometimes folks sprinkled sugar or honey over it. Other times they kept it plain. Either way, it filled your belly fast and kept you going. It never made the glossy magazine spreads, but it was reliable, frugal, and good enough to get a generation out the door. These days, breakfasts come frozen or boxed, but back then, a piece of toast and a banana could carry you through the morning. Cold cornbread in buttermilk was not a recipe. It was a habit so old in the rural South that children reached for a glass before they were fully awake. You crumbled in yesterday's cornbread, the dense, unsweetened kind baked in a cast-iron skillet, and the cold buttermilk soaked into every crevice until it softened into something between cereal and porridge, tangy and grainy and thick with the smell of soured cream. Some families ate it with a spoon. Some drank it straight from the glass. Wikipedia's entry on cornbread documents this practice. Cornbread crumbled into cold milk or clabber, similar to cold cereal. But no entry captures why it always tasted better from her glass than from yours. The tradition survived in households where buttermilk still came from a farm and cornbread was made daily. It slipped away when commercial buttermilk changed and skillet cornbread gave way to the boxed kind, and the taste of a cold glass on a hot July morning stopped being the thing that meant home. Butter and sugar sandwiches were born out of hard times, but somehow managed to become a treasured memory for many children. During the Depression and even into the 40s, families who could not afford much turned to the simplest ingredients they had on hand. A slice of bread was spread with butter, then dusted with a spoonful of sugar before being folded in half or eaten open-faced. It was quick, it was cheap, and it was sweet enough to make a child smile before school. Parents liked it because it was fast and cost practically nothing compared to buying jam or meat. The crunch of the sugar against the softness of the bread made it oddly satisfying, even though it was plain. Some families toasted the bread first, giving the butter a chance to melt into the surface and hold the sugar in place. Others simply spread it cold and handed it off on a plate. While nutritionists today might recoil at the thought, for many it was a taste of childhood happiness during lean years. It filled bellies just enough and brought a bit of joy to mornings that were often otherwise bleak. Bacon dripping toast was the breakfast that proved nothing should ever go to waste in a proper kitchen. After frying bacon, housewives carefully poured the rendered fat into ceramic crocks kept beside the stove, building a supply of flavor that would season meals for days. Fresh bread was toasted crisp, then spread thick with warm bacon drippings while the fat was still liquid enough to soak into the bread. The result was savory, rich, and deeply satisfying. Toast that tasted like bacon without requiring additional strips. Salt was sometimes sprinkled on top, though the drippings often carried enough seasoning on their own. Children ate these slices with gusto, unaware they were consuming what thriftier times demanded. The technique required no measurement because housewives spread drippings the same way they spread butter, By feel, by appetite, by what the morning called for. This breakfast has vanished partly from changing health concerns and partly because few kitchens still maintain dripping crocks. Sweet potato hash browns were the colorful alternative to regular breakfast potatoes, bringing Thanksgiving flavors to the morning table. Grandmothers shredded raw sweet potatoes by hand using box graters, creating orange strands that were squeezed dry in kitchen towels. The shreds were mixed with diced onions, salt, black pepper, and sometimes brown sugar. Cast iron skillets were heated with bacon grease until shimmering. Then the mixture was pressed down firmly. The hash browns cooked slowly, developing a golden crust before being flipped. The result was sweet, savory, and satisfying, with caramelized edges that crunched between teeth. These appeared on breakfast tables throughout November. Children initially suspicious of the orange color quickly became converts after tasting the caramelized sweetness. Sweet potato hash browns represented resourcefulness, turning a dinner ingredient into something breakfast-worthy. Number 5, a bowl of cream of rice. This was the gentlest hot cereal in the cupboard, smoother even than the wheat kind, made from finely ground rice that cooked up pale and silky. Mothers reached for it when a stomach was off, when teeth were tender, or when a small child needed something easy. You stirred the granules into boiling water or hot milk and it thickened in about a minute or two into a soft, mild porridge with no lumps and no fight. A spoon of sugar, a little butter, maybe a splash of milk to cool it down, and breakfast was ready before the coffee finished. It carried no strong flavor of its own, which is exactly why it suited a queasy morning or a fussy eater. The box sat right beside the cream of wheat and cost about the same. For an older person today, it is one of the kindest things in the pantry. Warm, smooth, easy to swallow, and ready in the time it takes to butter a piece of toast. It was the breakfast you made when you wanted to feel looked after. Warmed-over biscuits with honey gave new life to yesterday's baking for seniors who never wasted bread. Day-old biscuits were split and placed cut-side down in a warm skillet with butter, toasting until bottoms crisped, while insides warmed through. Drizzled with honey, these revived biscuits tasted nearly as good as fresh, crispy bottoms, adding texture the original lacked. This breakfast cost nothing extra since biscuits were already made and honey lasted months. Seniors could bake batches once weekly, knowing each one would find its purpose. The combination of crispy exterior, soft interior, and sweet honey created layers of pleasure. Warming biscuits required only minutes and minimal cleanup. Honey provided quick energy while biscuits delivered carbohydrates sustaining through morning. This practice has disappeared as fresh bread became cheap, but seniors once understood that yesterday's baking deserved respect and creative revival rather than the trash bin. Kugel spread on toast was a quirky and delightful dish first created in the early 1970s. The dish consists of kugel, a flavored peanut butter spread slathered on toast. Kugel came in various unique flavors like chocolate, vanilla, cinnamon, and banana, making it a playful alternative to regular peanut butter. The spread, manufactured by Kraft, became popular due to its unique and sweet flavors, which appealed to children and adults alike. The most popular flavor of Kugel spread was chocolate, which was often enjoyed as a sweet breakfast treat or snack. Kugel was discontinued in the late 1970s due to declining sales. Introduced in 1964 by Carnation, this wasn't just your average breakfast, it was breakfast on the go. Available in tasty flavors like chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, chocolate being the preferred choice, it promised the nutrition of a complete meal. The drink became a morning staple due to its convenience and nutritional content, highlighted in campaigns that emphasized its health benefits. Over the years, as consumer tastes evolved, Carnation adapted its formula to include lower sugar and higher protein versions, meeting the newer nutritional expectations without compromising on the quick, delicious start that families had come to rely on. The McDonald's steak, egg, and cheese bagel came out around the same time as its big breakfast and was often something families ordered together when they ate out. The incredible mix of egg and cheese with really flavorful steak bits into a bagel was something people in the States could not get enough of. It was especially popular with the older crowd, which is funny because the company initially thought it would be more popular with the younger crowd. Back then, you could get this bagel for $1.25, which was a reasonable steal and a perfect add-on at the time. Breakfast menus around the nation had a hard time competing with the steak, egg, and cheese bagel. And despite it being discontinued, it is an 80s icon we really want back. Mutton fat bread is something that's unapologetically itself. It's too rich, too deep, and it has all the meaty flavors you could ask for. The essence of rendered sheep fat is unmistakable here. It's something that goes perfectly well with day-old bread, slightly dry, a bit hard, and coarse. You know, the entire 9 yards. This is as rustic of a dish as it gets. It absorbs the hot fat in this dish and it crisps on the outside while getting extremely soft on the inside. This dish is something that you would see really commonly whenever you would pass by factory towns or farms, especially among rural laborers, such as people in the 19th and 20th centuries. They were sheep farming regions like the Appalachia, Wales, or the Highlands, and mutton fat was an extremely common ingredient in these areas. That's because it was always far more cheaper than butter, or just a lot more flavorful than lard. The ideal material for frying. The fried bread was also a good way for people to stretch meals, and although some people didn't vibe with the overly gamey taste, back then it was considered a standard of most red meat-based meals. Enough of all this savory stuff. Let's go towards something that's actually sweet. Believe it or not, people had incredible tricks and tips for that. Number 3, Eggs Benedict in a chrome counter diner. 2 split halves of an English muffin toasted on the griddle, a slice of seared Canadian bacon on each, a poached egg on top, and a ladle of warm hollandaise spooned across the plate at the moment the order left the pass. The dish dated to a Waldorf Hotel hangover order in 1894, and by the early 60s, a handful of Greek-owned diners in the Northeast had quietly added the plate to the back of the breakfast card as a Sunday-only special. A wedding photographer in Newark ate the plate every Sunday morning at a counter stool on Broad Street for 22 years. The chrome counter version was a small bridge between the hotel-restaurant tradition and the working-class diner counter, the way the Greek owners themselves bridged a New York hotel kitchen and a New Jersey roadside counter. The bridge held only until the hollandaise fell out of the diner kitchen in the 70s. The dish moved up market and never came. One of the most popular breakfasts of the time was Depression donuts. Forget your regular Krispy Kreme order and start writing this down. Depression donuts were all about survival since people back then weren't really rolling in dough, pun intended. But with minimal ingredients like flour, water, baking powder, and maybe a spoonful of sugar, these donuts became like a gift sent from above. Since eggs, butter, and milk were often scarce or expensive, people improvised with what they had. For the preparation, you'd mix up the dough and make it into little rings or balls depending on your preference, and fry in oil until golden brown. The results were immaculate. But if you've never fired donuts, don't expect this to be easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You have to be careful because that oil will fool you. You think you're the one in charge, setting the stove temperatures and being all fancy. But once that oil is hot, there's no telling if you are frying or burning those donuts. So be careful, because donuts are no joke. Scrambled eggs with evaporated milk were one of those frugal breakfasts tucked inside old homemaker guides and church fundraisers from the 1940s through the 70s. The secret was canned milk. You would crack your eggs, whisk in a splash of evaporated milk, and fry them up fast. The milk made them fluffy, rich, and stretch further than plain eggs alone. This mattered more than people today might think. During wartime and lean grocery weeks, a can of evaporated milk was gold. It lasted longer than fresh milk, cost less, and made ordinary eggs feel like a treat. Some families tossed in herbs or cheese if they had extra, but most kept it plain. Soft eggs with just a little salt and pepper. Quick, simple, and done in under 10 minutes. You will not find this recipe on Instagram or in trendy brunch spots, but it kept families fed and mornings moving. People used what they had, made it work, and turned humble ingredients into something satisfying. Before the skillet was hot, you already knew what breakfast was going to be because there was a bowl of cold mashed potatoes in the icebox from last night's supper, and nothing in that kitchen went to waste. Leftover mashed potato cakes were the thriftiest alchemy the working kitchen ever managed. You packed yesterday's soft and plain into flat rounds with your palms, pressed them into a skillet of hot bacon grease, and waited. The outside sealed into a crust that crackled under a fork while the inside stayed creamy and dense. Appalachian cooks in central Kentucky and Tennessee used this technique specifically because mountain communities substituted potatoes for rice. The land wouldn't grow rice, making the leftover potato cake a staple that appeared at breakfast, dinner, and supper depending on what else was available. You measured nothing. You just knew when the patty felt right in your hand. And if you had to ask, you weren't ready to make them. Avocado toast may feel like a trendy 21st century invention, but its roots go back much further. In California during the mid-century, avocados were abundant and often mashed onto slices of bread for a quick, fresh breakfast. Families growing avocados in their backyards knew the fruit was too good to waste, so it was eaten at nearly every meal. Toasted bread with mashed avocado was simple, nutritious, and fast to prepare, long before cafes made it fashionable. Some sprinkled salt and pepper on top, while others added sliced tomatoes or lemon juice if available. Housewives saw it as a modern choice, light but full of healthy fat that kept energy levels steady. In some households, children grew up thinking avocado toast was completely ordinary, only to realize later that it was unusual elsewhere. The spread was creamy and filling, and its natural richness made it taste indulgent without costing much. Forgotten for decades, it quietly lived on in California kitchens until its recent comeback. Back then, though, it was never about style. It was simply about using what was plentiful. What seems trendy now was once a humble, everyday breakfast that many families loved. Flannel cakes were the thick, tender pancakes that earned their name from their soft, almost cloth-like texture that distinguished them from thinner griddle cakes. Housewives beat eggs until light, added buttermilk and a touch of melted butter, then folded in flour and leavening until batter formed that was thick enough to mound on the griddle. These pancakes were poured in generous circles and cooked slowly, allowing the interior to set fully, while the exterior turned golden without burning. The result was pancakes with remarkable height and a tender crumb that absorbed maple syrup like fabric absorbs water. Served in stacks with butter melting between each layer, flannel cakes were Sunday morning indulgence that required no written instructions. Every housewife knew the batter was right when it fell from the spoon in thick ribbons, when the griddle sizzled at the proper pitch, when bubbles formed across the surface, signaling time to flip. This was cooking by sound, sight, and accumulated wisdom. Brown sugar bacon was the candy-like breakfast meat that turned ordinary bacon strips into something special enough for Thanksgiving morning. Grandmothers laid thick-cut bacon on rimmed baking sheets, then pressed brown sugar firmly onto each strip. The bacon baked slowly in the oven until the fat rendered, and the sugar melted into a glossy glaze that was smoky, salty, and sweet. The kitchen filled with an aroma that was impossible to resist. The bacon emerged from the oven sticky and crisp, with caramelized edges that shattered between teeth. These strips were dangerous because eating one meant craving 5 more. Grandmothers often doubled the recipe, knowing everyone would want more than a civilized portion. The bacon appeared on breakfast platters but also disappeared as snacks throughout the morning. Children would sneak pieces when Grandma's back was turned. This breakfast represented pure indulgence. Number 15. The poached egg on toast. There was something a little proper about this one, the kind of breakfast a person made when they wanted to feel looked after. You brought a small pan of water to a gentle simmer, slipped in a cracked egg, and let it set for about 3 minutes until the white wrapped around a soft yolk. A slotted spoon lifted it onto a slice of buttered toast, and the yolk broke open the moment your fork touched it. Salt and pepper finished it. No grease, no frying, no smoke in the kitchen, which made it easy on an older stomach and easy on the pan. Cooks who fussed over a runny yolk swore by a splash of vinegar in the water to hold the egg together. It took 1 egg, 1 slice of bread, and about 5 minutes start to finish. It looked like something off a tea room menu and cost about a nickel, which was the quiet trick of so many of these mornings. cream of wheat with brown sugar delivered smooth comfort to seniors needing easy nourishment on cold mornings. Fine wheat cereal cooked quickly in water or milk, stirring constantly to prevent lumps until reaching creamy thickness. Brown sugar was stirred in while hot, melting into sweet ribbons throughout the pale porridge, and butter created golden pools on the surface. The cereal was fortified with iron and vitamins, nutritionally valuable for elderly folks struggling to eat large meals. A single box provided weeks of breakfasts for under 50 cents during the 1940s. Seniors appreciated that it cooked in 5 minutes and required only 1 pot to clean. The smooth texture was gentle on sensitive gums, accessible even when health was failing. This breakfast represented industrialized comfort food, bringing factory convenience to tables where complicated cooking was no longer possible. Cream of wheat still exists, but few prepare it with the patience that once made it special, taking time to stir properly and sweeten thoughtfully. Toaster strudel, a sweet and convenient breakfast treat, first appeared in the early 1980s. This quick delight consists of flaky pastry filled with fruit or cream, toasted and topped with sweet vanilla glaze. Varieties like chocolate, cinnamon, and seasonal fruit keep it exciting. The type of icing traditionally used for toaster strudel is a sweet vanilla glaze, which adds a touch of indulgence to the crispy pastry. The treat became popular when it was embraced as an easy breakfast option by the Pillsbury Company. The brand's iconic Little Chef character helped promote toaster strudel as a fun and kid-friendly breakfast option. Toaster strudel was inspired by traditional Austrian pastries like Apfelstrudel, which were popularized in the United States by European immigrants in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Toaster strudel influenced breakfast trends, offering a quick and delicious option for busy mornings. Introduced in 1963, Sunny Delight positioned itself as a healthier alternative to sodas by offering a vitamin-enriched, citrus-flavored beverage that quickly captured the market's attention. Its bright color and sweet taste made it a hit among children, while its marketing campaigns emphasized a fun and active lifestyle, integrating Sunny D into scenes of youthful energy and outdoor activities. Despite its success, the brand encountered criticism for its high sugar content and low percentage of real juice, prompting several reformulations to increase authenticity and align with healthier consumer preferences. These changes allowed Sunny D to update its image and product offerings to better meet the expectations of modern consumers looking for healthier drink options. Sonic kind of stood out from the rest of the crowd with their take on a burrito-based breakfast. Their breakfast burrito had plenty of sausage, tots, cheese, and some bacon to top it off. It was pretty beloved, even though Sonic did not have the same pull as some of the biggest names in the fast food industry. Now, do not get us wrong, they were popular and a good local breakfast option, but their popularity was not as widespread as, let's say, McDonald's. As time passed, newer chains like Chipotle introduced their breakfast burritos that gained more traction than Sonic could generate. This meant a downfall in popularity for a breakfast burrito that once was loved by every person that visited Sonic. This led to the burrito being discontinued sometime at the start of the 2000s. Beef kidney stew is a rich, earthy dish that has a lot to bring to the table. Bold, distinctly old-fashioned flavors and more protein than your muscles probably know what to do with. It gives a really deep umami base. It has a little bit of a mineral flavor, slightly metallic. You know, that's par for the course when you're dealing with actual meat. But you throw this into a skillet with some slow-cooked onions, garlic, red wine, and bay leaves, and you'll end up with this incredibly exotic-looking stew. Dark, glossy, and full of flavor, it's something that has a velvety texture also, thanks to being thickened by flour. The chunks of soft, tender carrot and potato in there also give it an incredible contrast that the dish really needs. Now, historically, this has always been a staple of the working class, especially when you go into the 19th and 20th centuries. Today, beef kidney stew is something that's not really relevant outside of the usual TikTok bringing back age-old recipes. Number 11. Hangtown Fry. A small omelet folded around 3 breaded oysters and crumbled bacon, served with hash browns and buttered sourdough. The dish dated to the gold rush camps of Placerville, California in the 1840s, where an oyster and egg breakfast was the most expensive plate a miner could order with a fresh strike. A retired Sacramento Valley fruit packer at a counter stool in Stockton ordered it on the first Saturday of every month for 30 years. By 1965, the fresh oyster supply chain that ran from the Olympia coast down to the Bay Area was already shrinking, the way the salmon runs shrank a decade later, and the dish slowly disappeared from the West Coast menus through the 70s. Your great-uncle who worked the canneries may still remember the smell of the broiler oysters at the Stockton counter. The breakfast oyster never came back. Hardtack with jam. What's that, you might be wondering? Hardtack was the notoriously hard, dry biscuit that was used by sailors and soldiers. It had made a surprising comeback during the Great Depression. This shelf-stable cracker, made from flour, water, and salt, could last for months, making it perfect for tough times when fresh bread was a luxury. But eating hardtack on its own was just sad. And let's not forget to mention, hard on your teeth. That's where jam came to the rescue. Adding a smear of jam, or whatever sweet spread you could get your hands on, made the hardtack not only edible, but actually enjoyable. The sweetness of the jam softened the hard biscuit a bit, turning it into a makeshift breakfast that could carry you through the morning. Hardtack with jam wasn't about gourmet flavors. It was about survival, stretching ingredients, and making the most of what you had, whether you soaked it in coffee or milk to soften it up or just a bit down and hope for the best. Hardtack with jam was a Depression-era breakfast that proved you didn't need a lot to make something work. It was basic, yes, but it got the job done and added a little brightness to an otherwise tough time. Buttered cornflake toast was one of those forgotten 10-minute breakfasts that once lived in every kid's cookbook or church bulletin. You would toast a slice of soft white bread, slather it with butter or peanut butter if you had it, then smash some cornflakes on top. That was it. Crunchy, sweet, filling, and ready before the school bus pulled up. It was not some gourmet recipe, just a quick fix that felt special on rushed mornings. Most families kept cereal on hand anyway, and this was a way to stretch it when the grocery budget was tight. Sometimes parents sprinkled sugar on top, other times it was plain, but either way it turned leftover cereal into breakfast that actually stuck with you. You could even swap peanut butter for jam or just plain butter, depending on what was left in the fridge. These kinds of quick breakfasts were everywhere in old cookbooks. Simple, made from pantry staples, and good enough to get everyone out the door without complaints. Fried cornmeal mush was the breakfast that stretched a nearly empty pantry into something worth getting up for. You made it the night before. Cornmeal stirred into boiling salted water until thick enough to hold a wooden spoon upright, then poured into a loaf pan and left to set overnight. By morning, it had firmed into something you could slice. You cut it into half-inch slabs and laid them in a skillet of hot butter or lard, listening for the sizzle that told you the fat was right. The edges crisped while the centers stayed tender, almost custardy, with a deep corn sweetness that met the butter at the crust. You drizzled sorghum or whatever thin excuse for maple syrup the family had. Midwestern farm families had made it this way since the 1800s, and Appalachian households carried the same tradition well into the 1960s. The technique identical, only the pan changing from iron to aluminum. Nobody called it polenta. Nobody knew to. It went quiet when boxed cereals got cheap enough to replace it, and the person who made it never once thought to write it down. Tomato juice and crackers may sound unusual as breakfast today, but in the 40s and 50s, it was considered both quick and healthy. Housewives who were short on time often poured a small glass of tomato juice and paired it with a few buttered crackers to serve their families. Tomato juice had been marketed heavily as a vitamin-packed drink, especially after World War II, when people were urged to eat and drink more vegetables. It was easy to find in cans and lasted much longer than fresh produce. Crackers added some bulk, giving the meal enough substance to get through the morning without much cost or effort. Children may have preferred sweeter foods, but many adults thought of this pairing as modern and sensible. Some families even sprinkled celery salt into the juice to give it more flavor, making it taste closer to a cocktail without the alcohol. It was also considered lighter than eggs or meats, which appealed to people concerned with digestion. Forgotten now, It was once an everyday solution for households trying to balance speed, nutrition, and affordability. It may not have been glamorous, but it certainly served its purpose. Rice griddle cakes were the thrifty breakfast that transformed last night's leftover rice into this morning's crispy-edged pancakes. Housewives mashed cold rice with eggs, a splash of milk, and just enough flour to bind everything together. The batter was dropped onto hot griddles where it spread into irregular rounds, the rice grains creating a texture unlike any wheat pancake. The exterior crisped while the interior stayed tender and slightly chewy, each bite offering the comfort of rice in an unexpected form. Served with butter and syrup or alongside eggs and bacon, these cakes stretched resources without sacrificing satisfaction. The dish was particularly common in households where rice appeared regularly at dinner, ensuring nothing went to waste. No recipe existed because proportions adjusted based on how much rice remained and how many mouths needed feeding. Housewives simply added enough egg and flour until batter felt right. Bacon-wrapped maple sausages were the sweet and savory breakfast that disappeared from platters before anything else hit the table. Grandmothers took breakfast sausage links and wrapped each one in a half strip of bacon, securing it with toothpicks. The sausages were brushed generously with pure maple syrup. As they cooked, the bacon rendered its fat while crisping up, and the maple syrup created a sticky coating. The result was intensely flavorful, combining smoky bacon, seasoned sausage, and sweet maple in every bite. These were finger food breakfast, meant to be grabbed with napkins. Children loved the sweetness and the novelty. The preparation filled homes with the irresistible smell of bacon and maple that woke everyone naturally. Grandmothers often made extra because these would vanish fast. This breakfast represented indulgence, proof that Thanksgiving morning deserved special treatment. Number 12, plain scrambled eggs. By the 1960s, this was the everyday answer when a stomach needed something more than toast, and there was no time for fuss. You cracked 2 eggs into a bowl, beat them with a fork until the yolks broke loose, then poured them into a buttered skillet over low heat. A few slow turns with a spoon, and they came up soft and yellow in about 3 minutes. Some cooks splashed in a little milk to stretch the eggs and keep them tender, a habit carried over from leaner years when 2 eggs had to feed more than one mouth. A carton ran around 50 cents back then, so a scramble cost almost nothing per plate. For an older person, it is still one of the kindest breakfasts going. Soft on the teeth, warm, full of protein, and forgiving if you walk away from the stove for a second. Scoop it onto a slice of toast, and you have a hot meal that asks for 1 bowl, 1 pan, and barely any standing time at all. Cornmeal porridge delivered Southern comfort to seniors who grew up with corn as the staff of life. Coarse cornmeal was stirred slowly into boiling salted water and cooked until thick, requiring attention to prevent lumps. The finished porridge was pale yellow and slightly gritty, served hot with butter, milk, or syrup. Unlike smooth cream of wheat, cornmeal porridge had texture reminding eaters they consumed real food. The dish cost mere pennies since cornmeal was among the cheapest grains. Seniors could prepare it on the smallest burner using 1 pot, making cleanup easy. The porridge stuck to ribs, providing sustained energy through morning activities. In Southern communities, cornmeal porridge carried generations of history, connecting elderly cooks to ancestors who survived on corn when nothing else was available. The slight grittiness was considered virtue, proof of stone-ground authenticity. This breakfast has been replaced by instant varieties, but those who remember recall satisfaction of properly cooked cornmeal. Blueberry buckle is a delightful breakfast pastry that originated in the early 20th century. The term buckle originated in the 19th century to describe fruit-studded cakes that buckled under the weight of their toppings during baking. This dish, typically enjoyed as a breakfast or brunch item, combines a moist cake base with fresh blueberries and a crumbly streusel topping. The ingredients for blueberry buckle include flour, sugar, butter, eggs, and fresh blueberries, creating a sweet and satisfying treat. Blueberry buckle became popular when it was embraced as a traditional breakfast pastry in the northeastern United States, where blueberries are plentiful. In Maine, Blueberry Buckle is celebrated with an annual festival featuring baking competitions, tastings, and live music, highlighting the state's rich blueberry heritage. King Vitamin cereal, launched by Quaker Oats in the early 1970s, targeted young consumers with its king-themed mascot and crown-shaped cereal pieces. Its packaging, often featuring puzzles and stories, directly appealed to children's love for adventure and discovery. Fortified with vitamins and minerals, the cereal was an attractive choice for parents seeking nutritious options for their children's breakfasts. The engaging marketing campaigns utilized animated commercials that brought the whimsical world of King Vitamin to life, enhancing its appeal. The cereal's sweet flavor and unique shapes helped it stand out in the competitive market of children's cereals, making it a popular choice during its peak years, especially appreciated for its fun and nutritional content. McDonald's is also something you usually associate with burgers, fries, and a pretty good shake just like Wendy's, but they would also try to rebrand a little with their McSkillet burrito. Originally something they launched in the November of 2007, it was a masterpiece that captivated people immediately and became one of the biggest parts of their sales, giving their breakfast menu just as much success, if not more, than anybody else's. When you think about a McSkillet, you should imagine one of those monster burritos from Chipotle. This was just as famous as those which were pretty much the king of the burrito game, but people would often begin alternating between the McSkillet or outright switching to it. It really went well with some steak and roja sauce as add-ons. It is just that the McSkillet was not particularly a new concept, so when the initial hype died down, it got discontinued in 2013. Even now, there are still many online petitions to bring it back, so who knows? The liver and onions breakfast fry is a strong, unapologetic dish that comes at you with iron, fat, and attitude, which is what the morning needs. Liver slices, practically always beef or pork, are lightly floured and pan-fried, just shy of crunchy on the outside. Tender on the inside, it's all liver, undeniably. Rich, metallic, slightly sweet, extremely savory. Soft onions, caramelized along with or sautéed separately in the same skillet, add a sweetness that balances all that intensity. Often deep-fried in bacon grease or lard, the whole plate is smoky and salty, the depth of flavor more medicinal than indulgent. Some versions add eggs or grits on the side, but the liver and onions are the point. Protein-forward, greasy. It's something that's undeniably as rustic as it is protein-filled. If you like spending your Saturday morning riding the meat express to flavor heaven, then this is definitely a dish for you. Historically, though, this was a meal that people ate when they really needed fuel for all the digging, shoveling, and hauling of the day. Liver was something you could get for a dime a dozen from local butcher shops, and everybody wanted to take advantage of that fact. Number 12. T-bone steak and eggs. A small T-bone, 6 to 8 ounces, seared on a hot flat top until the bone side crust set hard, plated with 3 eggs over easy, a heap of hash browns, and buttered white toast cut on the diagonal. A cattle broker in Omaha ordered it every Monday morning at a counter stool in the Stockyards diner before he walked out to the pen lines, because the steak breakfast at the diner cost less than the same plate at the dinner hour. The dish carried a wage day premium at most union diners, and a man who ordered it on a Friday morning was telling the counter, the way a flag tells you which way the wind is blowing, that the paycheck had cleared. Steak and eggs survived into the modern era at chains, but the small independent counter beside a stockyard is gone with the yards. I wish these were the sweet kind of muffins, but unfortunately they're not. We are going to get to know one of the breakfast staples of the Great Depression era, carrot muffins. Some might say that this was a sweet way to sneak some veggies to the table. With butter and sugar in short supply, people used the natural sweetness of carrots to help flavor their muffins, creating a sweet and moist breakfast without breaking the bank. Now, I get that carrots have a sweet taste to them, but I wouldn't call this meal sweet unless someone added some sugar to it. Not much, just a little would be enough. These muffins were also super versatile. If you had some cinnamon or nutmeg, you could spice them up. Or if you had some raisins or nuts, you could throw them in too for some extra flavor. They were an affordable, filling option that got people through hard times and got some vegetables into kids' mouths and bellies. Not a total parenting waste, don't you think? Just kidding, it was an epic parenting victory. Any veggies that somehow get into kids' hands is a win-win situation. As I mentioned before, eggs were hard to come by in those times, and it showed. Food didn't contain enough protein, and it was hard to maintain energy levels throughout the day. Cottage cheese on toast with pineapple rings was the kind of retro breakfast you would find tucked inside those glossy 1970s women's magazines, always advertised as light, quick, and just fancy enough to feel like you tried. You would toast a slice of bread, scoop on some cottage cheese, and crown the whole thing with a pineapple ring straight from the can. It sounds odd now, but back then it was practical, filling, and passed off as health food, sweet, salty, creamy, and done in under 10 minutes, perfect for busy mornings or when groceries were running low. Housewives loved it for its simplicity, and teenagers liked it for being something different than plain old toast. You could find versions of this popping up at brunch tables, church socials, or just in quiet kitchens trying to stretch a meal. Somewhere along the way, it disappeared under the weight of new diet trends and breakfast bars, but at the time, it was a fast, no-fuss meal that worked. The smell hit you before you got to the kitchen. Not the warm sweetness of oats cooking in milk, but something thicker, saltier, more like a skillet than a pot. Oatmeal with bacon grease was what happened when the milk was out and the sugar was low and there were 6 people to feed before sunrise. You cooked the rolled oats in plain water, no dairy, no sweetener, and when the pot came off the stove, you dropped a spoonful of saved bacon fat into the bowl and sprinkled coarse salt over the top. The fat melted in rings across the surface. In mill towns across Tennessee, West Virginia, and the Ohio Valley in the 1960s, this was the standard weekday breakfast for households where the husband left for a 6 a.m. shift and the family ate whatever was fastest and cheapest. The grease gave the oats a savory depth that plain water never managed, and the salt sharpened every bite. Children who grew up eating it this way never quite trusted the sweet version. It tasted like something was missing. Cheese and crackers as breakfast may sound more like a snack today, but in many homes it was a simple stand-in when mornings were rushed. A small plate of cheddar cubes with butter crackers was quick to prepare and surprisingly filling. It was cheap, portable, and could be eaten in minutes, making it perfect for busy families in the mid-century. Housewives appreciated it because it required no cooking, just a quick slice of cheese from the block and a few crackers stacked on a plate. Kids liked the salty crunch, and parents knew the protein gave them enough energy to get through school. In rural towns where dairy was abundant, cheese was a constant presence on the table. Crackers stretched the meal further, making it both economical and convenient. Before sugary cereals dominated the breakfast market, this was the kind of quick plate that felt just fine to serve in a pinch. People did not think twice about replacing eggs or toast with cheese and crackers when time was short. It may not have looked glamorous, but it was one of those breakfasts that quietly kept families moving. Forgotten now, it was once a common, no-nonsense choice. Apple fritters were the breakfast treat that transformed ordinary fruit into golden, crispy pillows of sweetness that children and adults alike could not resist. Housewives peeled and chopped apples, then folded them into simple batter made from flour, eggs, milk, and a touch of sugar. Spoonfuls were dropped into hot oil where they puffed and turned golden, the apple pieces softening inside while the exterior crisped. Lifted from the oil and drained briefly, the fritters were dusted with powdered sugar or drizzled with maple syrup while still warm. The smell of frying dough and cooking apples filled kitchens with an aroma that brought everyone to the table before being called. These were autumn breakfasts when apples overflowed from orchards, but housewives made them year-round using whatever apples were available. No recipe was consulted because batter consistency was judged by how it coated the fruit, and oil temperature was tested with small drops of batter. Pumpkin spice waffles with maple butter were once the centerpiece of Thanksgiving morning, filling kitchens with cinnamon warmth before the turkey even touched the oven. Grandmothers mixed pumpkin puree directly into waffle batter along with nutmeg, ginger, and cloves, creating golden squares that were crispy outside and pillowy soft within. The maple butter was whipped by hand, combining softened butter with pure maple syrup until fluffy and spreadable. These weren't quick breakfasts, but intentional creations, made in heavy cast-iron waffle irons. Families gathered around the table while waffles came off the iron one by one. Children fought over corner pieces where the batter crisped darkest. This breakfast gave everyone energy for the marathon of cooking ahead. The aroma announced that Thanksgiving had officially begun. Today's frozen waffles can't touch the satisfaction of watching Grandma pour batter and flip the iron with perfect timing. Number 8. Graham crackers crumbled in milk. This one barely counts as cooking, and that was the whole charm of it. Back in the 1950s and on through the 1960s, graham crackers in milk was a common budget breakfast, sitting alongside shredded wheat and cornflakes as the plain, low-sugar way to start the day. You broke a few crackers into a bowl, poured cold milk over them, and let them sit just long enough to go soft like a homemade cereal. A sprinkle of sugar or a little cinnamon on top made it feel like a treat. The honey brown crackers came in a long, waxed sleeve and cost next to nothing. For an older person, it is about as easy as a breakfast gets. No stove, no toaster, no chewing through anything hard once the milk does its work. It was the sort of thing a tired body still reaches for on a morning when even toast feels like too much. Bread and warm milk represented the most elemental breakfast possible, requiring nothing but 2 ingredients and patience. Thick bread slices were broken into pieces, placed in a bowl, then covered with milk gently warmed until steam rose from its surface. The milk slowly softened bread, creating a meal half solid and half liquid. Some added sugar or cinnamon for sweetness, while others preferred it plain. This breakfast cost nearly nothing and could be prepared even when mobility was limited. Seniors with dentures found it easy to eat, the softened bread requiring almost no chewing. Warm milk soothed stomachs and promoted sleep for those who struggled with insomnia. During times when eggs were luxury items, bread and warm milk kept elderly folks fed without straining meager budgets. The dish carried memories of childhood sickbeds when mothers served the same simple combination. This breakfast has essentially vanished from American tables, too humble even for nostalgia, yet it once sustained millions through difficult times. Pancake on a stick, a fun and convenient breakfast treat, was first created in the early 21st century. This dish combines the classic flavors of pancakes and sausage into an easy-to-eat form, typically enjoyed as a quick breakfast or snack. The dish consists of a sausage link coated in pancake batter and then fried until golden. Pancake on a stick became popular when it was introduced as a convenient food option by companies like Jimmy Dean. Unusual variations, such as using different types of sausage or adding cheese, have added to the appeal of this dish. In 2017, pancake on a stick was featured on the menu of select fast food chains, further popularizing this innovative breakfast option. The dish has since become a favorite at state fairs and festivals across the United States. TV brand frozen breakfasts offered a comprehensive, ready-to-eat meal solution that included sausages, eggs, pancakes, and hash browns, simplifying the morning routine for many American families. Introduced in the 1970s, these breakfasts catered to the need for convenience and variety, allowing families to enjoy a hearty meal without extensive preparation. The marketing of these products highlighted their quick and easy preparation, appealing particularly to those with hectic morning schedules. The assortment within each package made these breakfasts highly appealing, as they catered to various preferences within a family, all from a single, easy-to-prepare kit. This product line was well received for providing a diverse and satisfying breakfast experience that could be enjoyed by everyone at the table. Something that went bar for bar with the French toast sticks were the Cinni Minis from Burger King, which were a delight you could not miss out on. Ever found yourself having a sudden sweet tooth or craving you cannot control for some cinnamon goodness? Cinni Minis were the cure for all your ailments, and they came cheaper than some ibuprofen or a Panadol. All the same, any headache you had after a bitter day would wash away with each delicious bite. Often, people would pair the French toast sticks with these too because they made such an elite dessert breakfast combo. Despite introducing it in the late 90s, its success was good enough for them to keep it in circulation until 2016, and the 2000s to 2010s were a volatile time for food in America. The market was constantly changing, and the cine minis eventually lost their spark. Turnip greens and cornmeal dumplings are a dish that confuses you. Is this survival food? Is this a nice little experiment with dumplings and vegetables? It feels like both. It was actually used in both ways too, so you would be pretty spot on with that assessment. See, people love to have fun with the things they did back then, even if those things were rooted in practicality and optimization. The turnip greens were something you simmered slowly, taking pleasure in the little things in life. You would absorb all the scents, fragrances, and aromas, and honestly, just doing that would kill most of your hunger. Plus, when they would get ready, they would turn silky and dark, and they had this really warm glisten to them. Swimming in a pot liquor broth that was abundant with pork fat, usually from a ham hock, it set the stage for an extremely soulful dish that knows what it's about. The cornmeal dumplings were then thrown into the pot, the perfect addition for something to revitalize your spirits. Soft spoonfuls of cornmeal dough would be mixed with bubbling greens, as they created a perfect Ghibli vibe for you to immerse yourself in. Historically, this is a dish that has been very common in Black and poor white communities. It's easy to romanticize today, but it is also a dish that's rooted in struggle, poverty, and making the most out of very little. Number 1. 2 eggs, bacon, and home fries. 2 eggs cooked over easy on a hot flat top, the yolks barely set and the whites lacy at the edge, 3 strips of crisp bacon laid across the side, a heap of diced home fries seared in the bacon fat with a little onion and paprika, and buttered white toast cut on the diagonal. The plate was the architectural cornerstone of your country's diner breakfast, the most ordered plate on every counter for the entire decade of the 60s. The cook plated it without thinking, the waitress called it a regular, and the counter in Akron, Ohio in 1965 turned out 400 of them between 5:30 and 10 on a Friday. The simple ritual, the cracked eggs hitting the griddle, the bacon laid in 3 parallel lines, the home fries pulled from the corner of the flat top, was the heartbeat of every working town in America. But the plate has not disappeared. The counter that turned out 400 a morning, with the cook who knew every regular by the door, is the part that has. Alongside grits with butter, there is also milk grits. The milk added creaminess and made the grits feel a little more indulgent. Perfect for mornings when you needed something to stick to your ribs and get you through the day. You could add butter to your milk grits and make a sort of combination of the two. A little pat on top made these grits taste like a fancy breakfast even when you were scraping the bottom of the pantry. But how are these two any different? Well, grits with butter was considered a salty meal to be served with bacon or cheese. But milk grits were usually sweet and often considered a dessert and not a breakfast option. Well, we all know that wasn't the case for me. Anything that could be considered a breakfast and a dessert at the same time is right up my alley. I loved waking up early as a child and seeing my mom make milk grits. And I'll let you in on her secret grits recipe. She always liked to add some honey and cinnamon to the mix. It made the dish 10 times better, I promise. Try it and see for yourself. Cinnamon toast with broiler crisp was one of those forgotten 10-minute breakfasts that once felt fancy, even though it came straight from the bread box. You would take a slice of white bread, butter it generously, sprinkle it with sugar and cinnamon, and slide it under the broiler until the top bubbled and crisped. That was it. No pancake mix, no waffle irons, just the broiler and a little patience. Kids loved it because it felt like dessert. Parents loved it because it was fast, and everyone loved it because it used pantry staples. During the Great Depression and even into the 70s, families relied on simple breakfasts like this to stretch groceries without giving up flavor. The sugar caramelized on top, the bread toasted just enough, and suddenly plain breakfast felt like a treat. You could find versions of it in old community cookbooks, school recipe cards, even homemaker magazines. Somewhere along the way, it disappeared under the weight of frozen waffles and cereal boxes. Salt pork and cornmeal gravy was the winter answer, older than anyone who made it could remember. You fried slices of salt-cured pork until the fat rendered out, removed the meat, and stirred cornmeal directly into the hot drippings, cooking it until it turned pale gold and smelled of toasted corn. Then came the milk, poured slowly while you scraped the pan, and the whole thing thickened into a gravy gritty and substantial in a way flour gravy never was. Food historians trace this cornmeal thickened version to the original lumber camp kitchens of southern Appalachia in the 1800s. The gritty texture led workers to joke the cook had used sawdust, and the name sawmill gravy stuck. By the 1960s, the flour and sausage version had largely replaced it, surviving only in households where women had learned it from women who'd learned it from the camps. The last of them are gone now. Cottage fried potatoes with eggs came from kitchens that wasted nothing, making sure even cold leftovers found a second life. Potatoes from last night's dinner would be sliced thin and tossed into a skillet with butter or meat drippings, crisping up golden within minutes. As the potatoes sizzled, eggs were cracked directly into the pan, frying in the same fat while soaking up the flavor. It was filling, inexpensive, and fast, the type of breakfast a farmhand or factory worker could eat before a demanding day. Children loved the crispy edges, while adults valued how quickly it came together on busy mornings. This was not a delicate breakfast. It was heavy, rustic, and designed to push hunger away until midday. Families in the mid-century leaned on meals like this, stretching what they had and avoiding waste. Potatoes were cheap and easy to grow, and eggs were staples few homes lacked. Together, they created a classic plate that has slipped away over time. Today, packaged breakfasts dominate, but nothing was quicker than frying potatoes and cracking an egg. Johnny cakes were the cornmeal pancakes that connected 1950s breakfast tables to colonial American kitchens through an unbroken chain of women who never wrote down measurements. Housewives mixed cornmeal with salt, sometimes adding a touch of sugar, then stirred in just enough boiling water or milk to create batter that held together without being stiff. Spoonfuls were dropped onto greased griddles, pressed flat, and cooked until edges browned and surfaces dried enough to flip. The cakes emerged crispy outside, dense and corny inside, nothing like the fluffy wheat pancakes that would later dominate American breakfasts. Served with butter and maple syrup or alongside bacon and eggs, Johnny cakes provided substantial fuel that lasted through morning labors. The recipe existed nowhere on paper because it lived entirely in practice, knowing by sight when batter was right, by sound when griddles were hot enough, by smell when cakes were done. Cornbread stuffing waffles were the genius breakfast that repurposed leftover Thanksgiving prep into something completely new. Grandmothers took prepared cornbread stuffing and pressed it into hot waffle irons, creating crispy squares that were savory and herby. The waffle iron transformed the stuffing into something with crunchy exterior and tender interior, with herbs like sage perfuming every bite. These were topped with gravy, fried eggs, or cranberry sauce for those who loved sweet and savory combinations. The beauty was in the resourcefulness, turning what might have been wasted into creative breakfast. Families loved them because they tasted like Thanksgiving dinner but felt appropriate for morning. Children thought eating stuffing for breakfast was hilarious. Adults appreciated the protein and the crispy edges. The waffles could be made with leftover stuffing after Thanksgiving too, extending holiday flavors into the weekend. This breakfast proved that creativity in the kitchen knew no boundaries. Number 17. Carnation Instant Breakfast. Carnation rolled this out in 1964 and aimed it straight at the young moderns in a hurry, the families who no longer had 20 minutes to sit at a table. You tore open a packet of powder, stirred it into a glass of cold milk, and breakfast was a drink you could finish standing at the counter. Chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry were the flavors that moved fastest. The powder carried protein, vitamins, and plenty of sugar, which the ads promised was a whole nutritious breakfast in a glass. Mothers handed it to teenagers who would not slow down and to husbands halfway out the door. For a senior who finds a heavy morning meal hard to face, the idea still holds up. It goes down easy, it takes 30 seconds, and it leaves nothing but a glass to rinse. It was the 1960s deciding that breakfast could be something you swallowed on the move, and people loved it for that. Fried salt pork with red-eye gravy provided intense flavor and precious fat for seniors who understood that salt and grease meant survival. Thin slices of salt-cured pork were fried slowly until crispy and brown, releasing rendered fat into the skillet. Black coffee was poured into the hot drippings, sizzling and steaming as it combined with pork fat into thin, dark gravy. The gravy was spooned over the crispy pork and served alongside biscuits or toast for soaking. The flavor was intensely salty, smoky, and bitter from the coffee, an acquired taste that those who grew up with it craved. Salt pork cost little and lasted for months without refrigeration, making it practical for seniors on fixed incomes. The fat provided essential calories while the coffee added familiar bitterness. In Southern and Appalachian communities, red-eye gravy carried generations of history. This breakfast has nearly vanished, considered too salty for modern health standards, yet it once sustained millions. French toast with powdered sugar, also known as pain perdu in France, is a beloved breakfast dish dating back to the 4th or 5th century. It involves dipping bread in a mixture of eggs and milk, then frying it until golden brown. Traditionally, it's served with powdered sugar, though various toppings like fruit or syrup can be added. The bread choice impacts the dish, with brioche or challah being popular for their rich texture and flavor. The name pain perdu means lost bread, as it originally used stale bread to prevent waste. Unique toppings such as cream or savory ingredients have added variety to this classic. In the U.S., Julia Child popularized French toast, cementing its place in American cuisine and making it a household staple. Her televised cooking show, The French Chef, played a significant role in introducing French toast to a wider American audience. Mapo Instant Maple Oatmeal set itself apart in the competitive oatmeal market with its unique maple flavor and the ease of instant preparation. Introduced in 1953, it became especially popular among families for its appealing taste and the memorable marketing character Marky Mapo, which resonated with children. The convenience of just adding hot water made Mapo a preferred choice for quick breakfasts, aligning well with the growing demand for efficient meal solutions. The distinctive maple flavor offered a sweet, comforting taste that stood out from more traditional oatmeal flavors, making Mapo a notable option in the breakfast category, favored for its taste and quick preparation. Costing nothing but $1 and 3 minutes of your time as the service worker assembled it, Taco Bell's mini skillet bowls were an amazing breakfast and lunch that people adored picking up. Why was it so good for takeout especially, and not a meal you would typically sit down and have? Because it was super quick in all regards, the preparation and the consumption. A quick affair to get you all readied up on your way to work or school, and it was always a sunny plus side that it left you with enough lunch money for later. In the corporate world, you really need cash on hand at all times for those midday cravings, and that is a part of why fast food culture and restaurants got so popular in the first place. Since the famous old Bell decided to take down the mini skillet bowls from their already stellar menu, people have found quick substitutes and ways around it. Mutton sausages are these super earthy, super robust, and unapologetically meaty dishes that offer an entire world of flavor for those willing to traverse its savory depths. They're grounded until they are extremely coarse, and the chew is something that lets you know you're eating something with a lot of flavor in it. Speaking of flavor, this is something that strikes a lot of unique notes. It's grassy, a bit gamey, and extremely savory, but it's seasoned in a very different way. You have blends of parsley, garlic, pepper jack, allspice, even nutmeg in there. People would also make really traditional blends with things like rosemary, black pepper, garlic, and a bit of vinegar. When you would cook these, the fat would slowly render out, and this would baste the meat internally, making it an incredible flavor festival for meat lovers. Number 20. Salt mackerel and home fries. A skin-on fillet of salt mackerel soaked overnight in cold water to draw the brine out, then broiled 3 minutes on a hot griddle until the edges crisped and the flesh flaked under a fork. The fish came on a plate with diced home fries, a wedge of lemon, and 2 slices of buttered rye. New England diners ran it as a Saturday morning special, a holdover from a fishing port breakfast culture that ran from Gloucester down to New Bedford. A retired dock worker in Portsmouth ate it every Saturday at the same counter stool with the same wedge of lemon. And your father, if he grew up north of Boston, may still remember the smell of the brine soak in the back kitchen on a Friday night. The dish died with the men who remembered the trawler decks. Biscuits were the bread of choice during the Great Depression. Quick, cheap, and made from the most basic ingredients. Flour, baking powder, salt, and fat, like butter, lard, or even oil if you were out of options, were all you needed to whip up a batch of these simple but satisfying biscuits. They didn't rise as tall or flake as beautifully as the buttery biscuits we think of today, but they got the job done, providing a warm, filling base for many meals. Whether served with eggs, slathered with jam, or covered in gravy, biscuits were a versatile and reliable breakfast option. They were especially great for families because they could stretch out a meal. Fill up on biscuits, and you wouldn't need as much of the pricier stuff like meat or dairy. Sometimes people would add whatever they had lying around, like cheese, herbs, or even mashed potatoes, to bulk them up and make them more interesting. Whether served at breakfast, lunch, or dinner, simple biscuits were a Depression-era favorite because they were easy to make and comforting. In tough times, a warm biscuit was like a small luxury that could make even the hardest days a little better. Poached egg. Over-stewed tomatoes was the kind of savory breakfast you would only find in old church cookbooks or handwritten recipe cards from a neighbor down the street. It was practical, filling, and ready in under 10 minutes, even if it sounded a little fancy. You would poach an egg, ladle some stewed tomatoes onto a plate, and serve it all with day-old biscuits or plain toast. The tomatoes were sweet and tangy, the egg added protein, and together they made breakfast that actually stuck with you through the morning. Families leaned on meals like this when money was tight and groceries were limited, especially during the Great Depression or lean years after the war. You did not need much: canned tomatoes, an egg, maybe some stale bread, and suddenly breakfast felt warm, filling, and just a little different than the usual toast. These meals disappeared as boxed cereals and frozen breakfasts took over, but back then it was one of the quiet ways people got through the morning with what little they had. If cracklin' cornbread was the food of strength, milk toast was the food of giving in. You made it when someone was sick, or very young or very old. You toasted white bread, buttered it while hot, tore it into pieces in a bowl, and poured warm, sweetened milk over the top until it softened into something that required no effort to eat. In the 1960s, it was still the standard invalid food in rural households, the thing you brought upstairs on a tray. The 1924 Wheat Council campaign had promoted warm milk toast specifically as a school child's breakfast, calling it one of the best things you could give a child in the morning. By the 60s, its reputation as sick food was complete, and children ate it without complaint only because being sick already felt bad enough. The women who made it are gone. The sick days in those specific rooms are gone. And the particular quiet of a tray being carried upstairs on a cold morning, that is gone too. Cottage cheese on toast with jam might sound unusual today, but it was once seen as a healthy and filling option. A slice of toast would be spread with cottage cheese for protein, then topped with a spoonful of jam for sweetness. It balanced savory and sweet in a way that appealed to both adults and children. For households watching their budget, cottage cheese was affordable and versatile, often purchased in large tubs that needed to be used up quickly. This made it a logical choice for mornings when eggs or meat were too expensive or unavailable. The jam added color and flavor, often homemade from backyard fruit or bought cheaply at the market. Together, it was a 5-minute breakfast that felt modern and sensible at the time. People praised it for being light, yet satisfying, and it became a regular in cookbooks that promoted practical eating. Over the years, cottage cheese lost its popularity, but at the time it symbolized a balanced breakfast. Forgotten now, it remains a reminder that simplicity can taste just as good as more elaborate meals. Quick, frugal, and wholesome, it was the kind of breakfast that worked for everyone. Cream-chipped beef was the breakfast that fed soldiers during wartime and families during peacetime with equal efficiency. Housewives made a simple white sauce by melting butter, whisking in flour, then adding milk until thick and creamy. Paper-thin slices of dried, salted beef were stirred into this sauce, their intense saltiness mellowing as they warmed through. The mixture was ladled generously over toast, the creamy sauce soaking into the bread while the beef provided chewy, savory bites throughout. The dish was filling, economical, and quick, exactly what busy mornings required. Dried beef kept for months without refrigeration, making it a pantry staple for households that valued preparedness. Men who served in the military recognized this dish immediately, though they called it by a far more colorful name. No measurements were consulted because the white sauce was made by feel, knowing when flour was cooked enough, when milk created proper consistency. Cranberry walnut coffee cake was the breakfast centerpiece that looked impressive but came together with surprising ease. Grandmothers made a tender cake batter with sour cream for moisture, then folded in fresh cranberries and chopped walnuts. The batter was poured into pans and topped with a cinnamon streusel mixture. The cake emerged from the oven golden and fragrant, with tart cranberries creating pockets of brightness. A simple powdered sugar glaze was drizzled over the top once cool. This cake was perfect for Thanksgiving morning because it could be baked the day before and still taste fresh. Families would slice thick pieces to enjoy with coffee while the turkey started roasting. The combination of tart cranberries and nutty walnuts felt seasonal. Children picked out the walnuts but loved the cake itself. Adults appreciated having something substantial with their coffee. The cake disappeared quickly, with people returning for second slices throughout the morning. Number 3, a leftover biscuit split open with jam. In a southern kitchen, there were almost always a few biscuits left from last night's supper sitting under a cloth on the counter, and morning was when they earned their second life. You split the biscuit in two, warm the halves in the oven or a hot skillet for a minute, then spread them thick with butter and whatever jam or preserves the pantry held. Blackberry, fig, peach, or grape jelly, whatever had been put up that summer. The cold biscuit came back soft and flaky with a quick warming, and the jam soaked into all the little holes. It was thrift at its finest. Last night's bread turned into this morning's treat with no baking at all. A jar of homemade preserves cost only the fruit and the work. For an older person, it is a way to use up what is already in the house and call it breakfast. Warm biscuit, sweet jam, hot coffee on the side, and a morning that began with something made by hand long before. Boiled wheat berries with milk delivered chewy, nutty satisfaction to seniors who remembered when whole grains meant real food. Dried wheat berries were simmered for hours until tender but chewy, then served hot with milk, butter, and sugar. The texture was unlike modern cereal, each grain requiring attention as it burst between teeth. This breakfast cost pennies since wheat berries were among the cheapest grains, bought in bulk from grain elevators. Seniors often cooked large batches, storing cooked grains and reheating portions throughout the week. Whole grain provided fiber, protein, and sustained energy that processed cereals couldn't match. In rural communities, wheat berries connected elderly cooks to farming traditions when families grew their own grain. The chewy texture was satisfying in ways mushy cereals weren't. This breakfast has vanished as quick cooking options took over, but those who remember it recall honest pleasure of real grain. Maple bars are a type of donut that was first created in the mid-20th century. This sweet treat is typically enjoyed as a breakfast item or snack, especially in the Pacific Northwest, where it has become particularly popular. Maple bars are made from a light and airy dough that's shaped into a rectangular bar, then fried and topped with a sweet maple-flavored icing. The maple bar is believed to have originated in Portland, Oregon in the 1920s, with local donut shops offering this unique variation of the classic donut. The type of dough used for maple bars is similar to that of traditional donuts, ensuring a soft and tender texture. In 2013, the mayor of Portland declared June 7th as National Donut Day to celebrate the city's rich donut culture, including the iconic maple bar. Curious how Jiffy Pop pancakes made morning meals a breeze with their just add water mix during the hectic 70s. This convenience resonated deeply with the 1970s households, streamlining the morning routine remarkably. The product's simplicity allowed anyone to quickly whip up pancakes, making it a popular choice among families with busy schedules. Jiffy Pop's marketing cleverly focused on these time-saving aspects, often showcasing family breakfasts that were both delicious and hassle-free. The mix was versatile, catering to various taste preferences with different flavors. While Jiffy Pop pancakes enjoyed popularity due to their convenience and taste, the evolving breakfast market eventually led to reduced visibility and presence, as newer breakfast options continued to diversify. Speaking of eggs, the Burger King enormous omelet sandwich came out around 2005 and rocked breakfast menus just as much as a good McDonald's bagel. A behemoth in both size and calories, this drew so much attention on social media and fans went in droves excited to try out the new mouth-watering monstrosity. For about $3.29, you could have yourself a full-course breakfast meal, and if you do not trust us, then no worries. The numbers speak for themselves, and Burger King saw a 20% hike in breakfast sales that left the bigwigs speechless. We guess you can never really go wrong with eggs and bread, which may just be the food equivalent of man's best friend. Fried salt pork with cornbread is a plate full of everything you like if you like bitter, salty tastes. Fat, frontier grit, and salt, this is the kind of food that made men out of boys. It's the kind of food that builds up muscle that isn't just for show, but the kind that gets railroads built. It's also the kind of food that people eat when they want to last through an especially aggressive winter. The salt pork gets heavily cured for preservation purposes, and it becomes streaked with fat. It's sliced into these thick strips and chunks, and then it's pan-fried until it's supremely crisp on the outside and really chewy in the middle. It tastes a bit like old bacon, especially the parts of it that are super salty and smoky. They have a very satisfying crunch, and they have a very lingering richness that just stays in your mouth. This is a combo that you would see a lot in the South and Appalachian regions, especially because salt pork was such an ideal way to preserve things. It is pretty much something everyone's grandparents have made at some point, despite now being something that's largely in the background. Number 7. The Howard Johnson Buckwheat Blueberry Stack. 3 buckwheat cakes the size of a tea saucer, a generous handful of fresh Maine blueberries folded into the batter on the griddle, and a small steel pitcher of warm Vermont maple syrup. Howard Johnson restaurants ran the stack as a regional breakfast signature on the New England turnpikes, and the Orange Roof restaurants on the Massachusetts and Connecticut routes built a Saturday morning family breakfast culture around the plate. A young father from Springfield drove his 3 children to the same Howard Johnson counter every Saturday morning of 1964 and 1965 before the divorce, and the children ordered the stack every time. The chain shrank through the 70s, and the buckwheat blend was discontinued in the 80s. Your father, if he was a Northeast suburban dad in the 60s, may still remember the way the syrup soaked the corners of the stack first. Molasses toast was the ultimate make-it-work breakfast during the Great Depression. Toast was already a cheap and filling option, but top it off with molasses, and it became a sweet, sticky treat. Molasses, a byproduct of sugar production, was cheaper than sugar and became a pantry staple for families looking to add a little sweetness to their meals. All you had to do was toast a slice of bread, or whatever bread-like product you could find, slather it with butter if you had any, and drizzle it with molasses. And it wasn't just a breakfast option, molasses toast was also versatile enough to be a snack or dessert. The molasses gave you a burst of energy, while the toast filled you up just enough to get through the morning. It might not have been fancy, but it was comforting, affordable, and a quick fix for a sweet tooth when you didn't have much else in the kitchen. The stove is still there in most of those kitchens. The skillets, too. What left was the person who stood at them every morning without a second thought, because feeding the house before sunrise was just what you did. If any of these breakfasts brought somebody back to your table, leave their name in the comments. Share this with someone who remembers the smell. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is a good time.